Welcome to the Dire Wolf Show, where we believe that America is exceptional and that our constitutional rights should never be infringed. I am Dire Wolf. On our show, we bring you the truth and debunk fake news. If you love laughing at the insanity of the regressive left, sit back and relax. Boy, do I have a show for you. Welcome back, Wolfpack. Dire Wolf here for our weekly news recap from behind enemy lines on YouTube, where speech is not free and the truth is demonetized.
Wow, you really had your Wheaties this morning with that one.
I am literally dying right now.
I didn't realize you were going to be that, like, I could have done the intro for you, buddy.
Well, yeah, don't worry. Hey, there's so much important news for us to cover that, despite the fact that I feel like crap, I think it's important for us to talk about these things.
Yes, it's merely the downfall of Western civilization that we have to cover. So
it is not merely the destruction of our country and its democracy, and possible civil war or a civil conflict. It's not just that. It could be possibly
chronicling the final days of the Republic.
Yeah, not only that, but also the possible downfall of Western civilization as a whole. So, I mean, it's kind of a big deal. Might want to talk about it.
Yeah. And I mean, with a cough like that, Dire, who knows how long you'll be with us? So
I will endeavor to do a better job of muting myself before coughing. Alongside me is my co-host, Fox Revis.
Oh, I am not alongside you today. No way. I don't want to get sick again. So
yeah, it might be COVID or something worse like the vaccine.
Yeah. I have blood clots. Yeah, I mean, thank God you've been vaccinated, though, right?
Right, yeah. I hear blood clots are good for you.
Yes,
right?
They really clean out the blood from your veins. As always, tonight, we have a great show for you. But first, I will be thanking our sponsors because I'm sure Dire does not want to talk any more than he has to. This show is only possible because of viewers like you and because Dire decided to go above and beyond. I wouldn't quite say hero status, but pretty close in doing the show, even though he's sick.
Fuck you.
We would especially like to thank those of you who donate to us financially, including Kaylette, Ori, Maine, Nathan, Cameron, Tetris Freak, Slowpoke Garcia, Thunder Erican, the White Lion, who's a lion, the Timberwolf, who's a Timberwolf, and the White Wolf, who is a wolf whom is white. If you would like to buy Dire a cough drop, you can do so with the links down below. If you go, money though is not the only way that you can give. We also appreciate you liking and subscribing to us on DLive, YouTube, Rumble, which we really need to add that in there. Go watch us on Rumble. It's Rumble. The Rumble app has gotten substantially better in the last 6 months. I know when Crowder moved over there, he actually had to move over there full-time a few weeks ago after he got kicked off of YouTube for a week. But he started over on Rumble about a year and a half ago, and even he said, Rumble's got some growing to do, and he was right. The web app really sucked. The mobile app was completely unusable. However, if you've not attempted to use them in the recent few weeks, the web interface is much, much better. It's got a nice dark mode as the default. And the Android app is actually really nice. It actually works the way that you expect it to work. It's comparable to YouTube, and their search algorithm is getting much better, whereas before, if you searched, for instance, Dire Wolf Media, you for some reason didn't get Dire Wolf Media. But they're getting better. It could be even better, but it's better than what it was last year. So if you've not been on Rumble in a while, give it another shot and see how you like it. I certainly have high expectations for an application like that, and I finally feel like I can use Rumble as a semi-regular driver alongside YouTube, and then hopefully into the future be able to use it as a permanent daily driver for when I'm supposed to be doing work. But
the reason why YouTube is the way it is because they've had so much funding that they've been able to get to where they are.
Yeah,
so the only way Rumble
YouTube
can get
sucks
there,
too.
Yeah, so the way Rumble can get to where YouTube is as far as quality, not as far as everything else, is just going to require more using of it. So
Yep.
if you want to help it grow, go there.
Yep. Alrighty. So, our opening funny comment is about some numbers. So, numbers are the way that you measure things. You typically measure them in numbers, and so numbers are important. For instance, a number that's very important to measure is the number of jobs that Joe Biden has created. Personally, Joe Biden started companies, because when the president creates jobs, right? I mean, that must mean that he's going out, he's starting small businesses all over the country. He's personally...
See, you say that jokingly because, no, most presidents don't do that, but Trump's the only president that did.
Yeah, Trump actually has done that. But in saying that, it highlights the ridiculousness of a president saying that they've created jobs. But either way, it is one measure by which we measure the presidency. So how many jobs has Joe Biden created since he took office? Dyer, do you have a guess at how many jobs he's taken?
Taken or gained?
You know, that was actually an unintentional Freudian slip.
Yeah, I would
wow,
say
that was real time. I just totally
I would
screwed
say
that up.
that Biden has inhibited more jobs than he has directly enabled. I think that his presidency hasn't overseen job growth greater than what was lost, and that they are still in the negative. But I'm pretty sure if they were try to describe how many jobs they created, they probably use far too many syllables.
Okay, my guess is 1.21 gigawatts. That's my guess.
Too many syllables.
All right, well, let's see what the White House press secretary, Jean-Pierre Jeans, has to say.
So, as you know, the good news is in August, the economy created 315,000 jobs, which is important. We have created nearly 10,000 million jobs since President Biden took office.
10,000 million jobs. Let me see if I can fix that for you, Dyer. Where's your little thing?
Yeah, I don't think that's a real number, or at least that's not how you express that number. It's also not real.
Is that 1,000 million? I mean, it's right around like a quadrillion and like, you know, a whole lot and a bunch.
Okay, so clearly she misspoke. Now, if this was Trump, if he misspoke, then they would take that.
I don't know. Did she misspoke, Dyer?
Okay.
I feel like she
if
probably
it was Trump,
thinks
they would take his words literally and lambast him for using the wrong word. I'm going to be super charitable and say, okay, she either meant 10,000 or 10 million, and she's wrong either way. So fuck it.
Let's listen to it one more time.
1,000 million jobs since President 10,000 million, 10,000 million, 10,000 million.
10,000 million. That's how many rumbles we actually have, Dyer. It's 10,000 million. Did you know that?
I hate to break it to you. We only have 35, but I think that our
You mean
followers
35,000 million? 35 bajillion. It's a zillion thousand.
Do the
Gigawatts.
words? You know what? Maybe the job numbers identify as thousand millions.
They do. Yeah, so as Dyer said, whether it's 10,000 or 10 million or 10,000 million, incorrect. Incorrect. Joe Biden was at minimum expected to get back 6.5 million jobs, which was the approximate number of jobs that were lost under COVID. That was bare minimum. And why were those jobs lost under COVID? Well, because the Democrats shut down half the country domestically, and the Democrats, the leftists, or the extension of the International Democrat Party abroad, shut down whole countries for years at a time, which collapsed the whole economy. So there was an expectation that we would at least get back to par, and we've definitely not even done that. So not 10,000 million.
So I think in total, the U.S. had lost 20 million jobs, but a lot of them were already being brought back before Biden took office, right?
It's hard to say. I mean, when you just have full industries being closed down and then at some point you open them back up, I don't know. I guess Joe, point to the policy that increased the number of jobs. Like, point to the policy coming from the White House that authorized governors to reopen their economies.
How dare you?
Why would you do that?
Adder Lupus gave us $5. Well, thank you so much, Adder Lupus. If you have anything you want to say in chat, just go ahead and we'll read that out. Otherwise, Dyer appreciates you buying him cough syrup.
We do appreciate it. There's also that study that showed that down during COVID would not be reopening.
What are you playing with your mic? You're coming in and out.
Sorry, how about now?
It sounds like your aux cord's like loose or something.
Let me check that.
Okay. But yeah, we'll let Dyer reiterate his point.
Okay, so a study showed that 40% of the businesses that were shut down during COVID due to the lockdowns were not going to reopen at all. So there's that long-lasting damage as well. That's jobs as well. They're not coming back, and the type of jobs that are coming back are not small businesses, which are the lifeblood of the economy.
Now, to be fair, some of those jobs didn't need to come back. For instance, CNN's been hemorrhaging employees the past year. So, not all the job losses are bad.
Ironically, some of the jobs that we need the least were untouched by the lockdowns, like, I don't know, most of the bureaucracy.
Yeah, that's fair. Adder Lupus says that he's actually on time today. I do feel bad that, Adder Lupus, you think that we're on a particular schedule, and that's definitely our fault, our bad. I apologize to you. If you're missing the show because we have kind of a random time between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern that we start the show at this time, that's not your fault. That is our fault.
It's Fox's fault.
Do not feel bad. It's 100% Dyer's fault. Alrighty. Well, let's get on to our first big story here.
What about the
we do. It's the lead-in. Hold on.
Cool.
I'm doing a funny lead-in.
Both funny and sad.
Yes. So Joe Biden gave a speech on Thursday. You may have heard it. If you did not hear it, here is Joe Biden giving that speech.
Psst, quiet. Dude, shut up. Do you think maybe we're kind of the bad guys?
Oh, come on. Why would you say that?
I am President Bo Beijing. Bow before me, fat.
Did they really need to install a lightning machine?
It lends an aura of strength and credibility.
I am the king, and you will fear me, Jack.
Dude.
Okay, he's a little unorthodox, but he's a reasonable man.
This guy's MAGA man. He lives under your bed. He distills your uterus and drags it back into the 1950s. Kill him on the spot, not a joke.
This is stochastic terrorism.
Oh, that's a bit hyperbolic, no.
Only way to deal with ultra MAGA, gotta show him who's boss. You gotta show him I'm losing my patience. Ah, come on, man. Help me, Jack. Come on.
Now do you think there's a problem?
I can't believe that Trump supporter set the president on fire. Do we step in?
He's fine.
Become
Alrighty. Well,
He's fine.
Thank you, Freedom Tunes. All right. Well, that was the fun version of Joe Biden's speech, which didn't sound that fun. But we're gonna dig into his speech today. As you guys may have heard, Joe Biden gave a very fiery, but mostly stochastic terrorist speech on Thursday, in which he identified all Trump voters. Now he tried to walk that back. However, he did identify.
He walked back as well,
yes,
as did his press secretary.
Yes. However, the actual substance of the speech is that all Trump voters and anybody who supports the right to life or is pro-life are basically terrorists and need to be targeted by Biden voters and by the U.S. government. And it is now the official U.S. government policy, potentially endorsed by the military, that Trump voters are just terrorists, which is
so this,
a lot of fun.
Speech...
Now, what I'm saying here sounds hyperbolic. However, we are going to dig into this speech here and back up everything I just said.
It is not at all a hyperbolic what you said. Now, if you look how his own supporters responded to it, the ones who have been calling for the dehumanizing and of Trump supporters and the jailing and supporting of violence against Trump supporters, those are the ones that are praising this speech as being what he needed to do from the very start. This is the most important speech of his presidency. They're the ones that are saying this is what they want. So when violent extremists are saying, yes, this is the kind of rhetoric we want, that you should be thinking, maybe that's what this supports. Maybe it supports that kind of violence. In any case, this kind of speech, this fiery rhetoric is exactly what you'd see in a pre-war speech, a speech where a president is trying to get the people to unite to fight an outside force. But the only problem is the force he's trying to mobilize the populace against is other Americans.
That is correct. So we're going to start off by just going through several minutes of the speech, and then we'll have commentary during, and then we'll jump into other key points. Most of this show is going to be on the speech. I think we all knew that there was a plan for this speech. However, I believe everyone was rather taken aback once the speech was actually given at the level of aggression on us. So we weren't necessarily planning on having the whole show be about this speech, but after, it kind of had to be. All right, let's start off here. So, well, Joe Biden's going to tell you all about where he's at. So, let's see here. Oh, I had to slow this down. I had it playing at 2x while I was reviewing it.
Fellow Americans, please, if you have a seat, take it. My fellow Americans, please, if you have a seat.
Start right off the bat with just coughing.
I speak to you tonight from sacred ground in America, Independence Hall in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. This is where America made its Declaration of Independence to the world more than 2 centuries ago with an idea unique among nations, that in America, we're all created equal. This is where the United States Constitution was written and debated.
All right, well, written and debated, so the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. Now, he is correct that those were both done at Independence Hall. However, Joe Biden doesn't know anything about the Constitution and doesn't know anything about the Declaration of Independence. Here's Joe Biden literally 48 hours earlier talking about the Constitution or the Declaration. I'm not sure. I'll let you decide.
Let's remember who in God's name we are. I really mean it. What our values are. What we believe. We the people. That's how our Constitution starts, or the Declaration. We the people.
Yeah, we the people. That's how he gets it right the first time. And he's like, wait. They tricked me. I had to go back. The Declaration. The Declaration of Independence starts off with, we the people. No, it doesn't, Joe. So right off the bat here, again, you're at the first 30 seconds, coughing, not a strong leader there. He does start getting into his stride, and then after having seen a press conference he had on Friday, the day after, and how very tired and lethargic his words were, very clear that he was hopped up on something on Thursday night. However, they should have got him talking in the backstage in the green room for a few minutes beforehand so he could get his throat cleared out, because eventually he does get himself into a nice groove there and has that strong, fiery rhetoric. Joe's never more energetic during a speech than when he's talking about oppressing half the country. So
it's also worth noting that he's saying that he's starting off with the lie that he believes that all Americans are created equal. But then, as you'll see during this speech, he does not believe that MAGA supporters, that Trump supporters are equal, that they are the other. And his administration has put people who are Trump supporters in jail to deprive them of their constitutional rights simply for supporting Trump, not actually for having committed any crime.
The theme that the Democrats have been running with, and what this speech really solidifies, is both things are true, Dyer. He does believe that all American citizens are created equal. He just doesn't agree that MAGA supporters are American citizens. They are an external other. They are terrorists. They are attacking the foundation of this country, and they need to be dealt with appropriately. But he
also doesn't believe that white people are equally citizens, because he gave out farm subsidies to black, or attempted to give farm subsidies only to black and non-white farmers. He's done multiple different federal programs that gave up money based off of people's skin color. So he doesn't believe that white people are equal citizens. There's no part of his policies that treat people as equal. He does not treat the people who are the victims of criminals that he's letting loose. He's not treating them as equal. He's giving more, like a Trump supporter walks into a federal building and gets put in jail in solitary confinement for many months, whereas this is a recent story of someone who committed armed robbery and got arrested 4 separate times and then released again and committed more crimes, kept getting released and committing crimes over and over again because of California's no bail system. That's not treating people equal.
A Trump supporter, a Democrat, and an Antifa walk into a bar. Who's the FBI agent? All of them. They're all FBI agents.
Yeah, probably. So, I mean, Biden's administration Kamala and Biden gave support to Antifa. Kamala actually organized funds for their legal defense, where they were burning down businesses.
Let's not. We got 9 more minutes of this analysis to go through. The political violence will surely come up, so we'll save that one.
This is where we set in motion the most extraordinary experiment of self-government the world has ever known. With 3 simple words: we the people.
Again, I want to play this clip. This is from literally 48 hours before. Joe does not know where the phrase "we the people" came from.
What we believe, we the people. That's how our Constitution starts, or the Declaration. We the people.
So he's had the "we the people" line quite a few times in the last 2 or 3 weeks. That must be a new favorite tagline that a speechwriter has. However, if you're going to have a tagline that's the opening preamble to the Constitution, it might be a good thing to kind of remember where you got that from. You know, what's funny is Joe, this is not the first time Joe has run for president. It's been multiple times. I mean, this was like the 5th time's the charm for him. And previous times that he ran for president, his campaign got swamped because he was plagiarizing speeches from other political leaders. Now he's plagiarizing the Constitution, and he doesn't even know that that's where he got it from.
Yeah. I think that it's kind of ridiculous that he keeps repeating that it's the American people that the Trump supporters are opposed to, when he's pretending like he has a mandate, when he only has 38% of support. He doesn't have the majority of the country supporting him.
Yeah, why don't while we're listening to this, you could probably pull that up, because we'll definitely need to reference that. If you could get that pulled up and sent over to me, that'd be great.
What, the stats?
Yeah, because I think that was a recent poll, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Yep. Alrighty, let's see here. We got a few more seconds here before we jump forward.
We the people.
We the people.
These 2 documents and the ideas they embody, equality and democracy, are the rock upon which this nation is built.
All right. As Dyer said, they don't give two Fs about equality.
They're how we became the greatest nation on earth. They're why, for more than 2 centuries, America has been a beacon to the world.
So he'll go on to say a bunch of actually true things for another about 2 minutes about the greatness of those documents, about the greatness of America's leadership for 250 years throughout the history of the world, how those documents inspired so many positive social movements and peace and stability around the planet. And all of that's true. And all of that is stuff that you know for 100% fact that he and the Democrat Party just do not believe. You cannot have the party of 1619 then wrapping themselves in the flag and the Constitution and the Declaration saying these documents promoted world peace for 300 years almost, and at the same time saying these documents were created by white slave-holding old men who were evil. You can't have both of those things. But the point of Joe Biden doing this is to set the stage for the part of the speech that we're about to jump to. He's got 2 minutes of this flag-waving patriotism, wrapping himself in these documents, saying America has been the best thing that's happened to the planet in history. And all of that is to key up your patriotism. Key into, okay, Joe Biden's talking about things that speak to you, that I love this country. I love America's history. I think that these documents are, some of the best written anything that humans have come up with in all of human history. I believe in America. I want America to succeed. I want America to be dominant abroad. All of that stuff. Patriotic, all that sort of flag-waving stuff. He's trying to get you in the mood of patriotism so that he can then say, well, the MAGA people, they're not patriots. And you know what we do with not patriots. And you're like, yeah, that's right. Because I just heard you talk about for 2 minutes about how you love the flag and the Constitution. So I know you're a patriot. And if you're saying people aren't patriots, well, by golly, they're probably not patriots.
Yeah, he's going to say that these people I'm talking about, they're the ones trying to destroy all this good thing I was describing to you about, our heritage and our founding document. This evil group of people, they're trying to destroy all that.
Yep. So we just skipped ahead about 2 minutes in the speech here. Again, that whole time was just filled with rah rah America. And then here's the punchline.
But first, we must be honest with each other and with ourselves. Too much of what's happening in our country today is not normal. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic.
All right. So,
wow.
Do you love the republic? Well, MAGA and Trump and MAGA and Trump, they are a threat to the foundation of the republic. He didn't even say democracy that time. He said the republic, which is the correct terminology for it.
Yeah, let's talk about not normal though. Is it normal for a president, a vice president, to use his political clout to get personal gain by using his influence over foreign policy? Is it normal for our president and his kids and his family to enrich themselves off of deals with China, our adversaries? Is it normal for him to use the FBI and IRS, which he used the IRS both under as president and as vice president, to go after his political rivals, to prevent people under Obama, Biden, prevent people from being able to raise money for political groups by bogging them down in a legislative or in a bureaucratic nightmare.
Dyer, that's, you're absolutely correct, but Joe he's basically preempted your argument there by saying, well, the MAGA supporters, the Trump voters, the Trump himself, they have created these abnormal times, and the response to abnormal times is an abnormal response. So everything that you just said, yes, that is not normal. However, it is justified by him saying, well, MAGA extremists, they're the things.
Chicken or
they
the
were
egg,
they were not normal to start with. So the only way to respond to something not normal like MAGA extremism is to do something not normal with like the FBI, or to let Hunter take $500 million from Burisma. That's what the response has to be, because
the FBI,
the MAGA supporters are the ones that aren't normal.
FBI not going after Hillary for her actual crimes, and not going after the Bidens for the actual crimes, but going after Trump for not crimes. That's not normal. And to your point, and to his point, chicken or the egg, right? So Trump was a response to the corruption and lack of action from the Democrats. So yes, the statement to say that we need to shut down the FBI might seem like an extreme solution to an extreme problem. So the problem existed first, though. Trump is the response. Biden is not the one responding to the crisis. Biden represents the crisis, and Trump is going to have to take extreme actions to undo the damage he's doing. The damage of the border being left open and allowing human trafficking, enabling the federal government is enabling human trafficking, and the fentanyl and other drugs coming across our borders. Those are abnormal actions that are actual threats to our democracy and to our republic that are the fault of Biden. The fact that he hamstrung our fuel production to make us dependent on our enemies so that our enemies can harm our economy, that's an abnormal thing that Biden did to hurt our country. And Trump's actions were abnormal as well when he was trying to ramp up productions, going personally talking to business leaders and making deals to help bring more energy production to America. Those were abnormal, but they were good. Being abnormal, not being a bad thing.
So, on what he just said there, on what Biden just said there, Trump and MAGA extremists are a threat to the country. Now, there might be some confusion as to what kind of a speech this is. When the president speaks, there's two ways that he can speak. He can either talk about party business, or he can talk about nation business. Nation business, that's the kind of speech that this was supposed to be. When he's talking about nation business, things about the country, he can use taxpayer resources to give that speech. He can do it at historic locations. He can be flanked by two Marines that appear to be endorsing what he's saying. He can use taxpayer funds to set up the stage for it. If he's going to be talking about party business, giving a political speech, then he can't do any of those things. So what kind of speech is this? Well, this is clearly a nation business speech, even if it appears that the content is political. Again, a party, because the president will always be the leader of whatever party they represent. So he can sometimes give party speeches in which he would talk about party platform politics. Or he can give nation business speeches where he's going to talk about national priorities and national policy. So, is this a political speech? Well, a lot of people accused Joe of mixing those two kinds of speech, and they accused him of giving a political speech while using taxpayer resources and tricking the military into standing behind him in appearance of an endorsement. However, the White House has been adamant that this was not a political speech. Here's Jean Perry saying that.
Isn't the speech in which the president concludes by saying vote, vote, vote inherently political? He wasn't referring to voting for any candidates. He wasn't saying vote for Dr. Oz. He was saying vote to reject the MAGA forces. I mean, isn't that a political speech?
We don't think it's a political speech. When I was here yesterday, I actually said that he would mention voter participation and getting folks out there to make your voices heard. I said that at the podium yesterday when I was asked what this speech was going to be all about.
Okay, she wants participation. Biden wants participation, but not for voting for Trump. So what does that mean then? He's trying to get out the vote for his party, which means it's political. What do you mean you don't think it's political?
Well, hold on a second. Let's. She has one more thing to say on that
right now.
And I know you guys have addressed this to a certain extent, but because you're behind the podium, if you could address the criticisms and the questions about why the president delivered what sounded very much like a politically charged speech as an official White House event, taxpayer funded, with 2 Marines in uniform in particular flanking him and visible on camera throughout the
So
speech.
I'll take your first question. Look, the way we see it here, and I would argue the way many Americans across the country see it, is standing up for democracy is not political.
All right, so I mean, yeah, Dyer, that's one read on it, but they keep saying that's not political. And again, what did I say about nation business speeches that are official White House events? Those are about national policy and national priorities. Now, we've seen similar speeches that have a similar tone during the Bush years about Al-Qaeda, and then during the Obama years about ISIS, and during the Trump years also about ISIS. And during those, opposition to terrorist groups, well, that's not political. That's just national security priorities.
It's an enemy of the country.
It's an enemy of the country. So, I mean, Joe said during the speech that Trump and MAGA extremists are, quote, a threat to the country. So they were adamant that this was not a political speech. They're not advocating political ideas. They're saying these extremist threats to our country have to be national policy, a national priority. This isn't rhetoric. Now they could have leaned into it and they said, you know what, this was a political speech. Oops, our bad. We shouldn't have done that. This was just political rhetoric. But because they doubled down on the fact that they think this is not political rhetoric, that can only mean that this is political policy. This is national policy. Joe Biden believes that Trump and MAGA extremists are a threat to the country, just like ISIS is, because he said that. He said that they are a threat to the country. And it's not about politics. It's about a real and present danger to the country, as they believe it to be true. So it is actually much worse for them and for us for them to say that this isn't political. It's not about politics anymore. This is about they perceive you as an actual threat. This is why people were calling this speech a declaration of war, is because, well, that's what it was. That's what it was.
If this had been a political speech, then the president would have been wrong to request for Marines to be on the stage with him or within frame behind him. The leadership that okayed them to be there would also be wrong. And the Marines themselves would be wrong to accept going to such an event. And though they likely didn't, the Marines themselves did not know what was going to be said, they should not have been there for a political statement. But if this was a speech about state business, then it would be completely normal for the president to have military members on stage showing support for the military and the military support for his statements, because what he says has the backing of the full federal government and all of its powers in enforcing the policy he is enacting. So he doesn't have to necessarily say, this is the policy I want every single part of the bureaucracy to do. If he puts out that this is our overarching goal, this is my vision, this is our enemy, go out and fight them, now those individual bureaucracies know that this is their marching orders, this is their declaration of war. They now are emboldened and empowered to take action towards his ends.
Yep. So, the question is, are Trump supporters a threat to the country? Well, in response to this question from Peter Doocy on Friday, we have a clip of how Joe Biden responds. So, we'll let you watch here. So, this clip shows it doesn't show Peter Doocy asking the question, but that's what happens right before, is Peter Doocy asks, do you think Trump supporters are a threat to the country? And this clip puts together shows Biden's response on Friday, and then it also replays the clip that we just watched from his speech on Thursday. We'll let you decide.
I don't consider any Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic.
All right. Well, I mean, I guess as a threat to the foundation of the republic, is that also a threat to the country?
Yes.
Yeah, I would say yes. So, you know, there, and I'm going to go into in a little bit here, because he constantly tries to walk back. The day after, there was a lot of walking back of what he said, and even during the speech, there was some a little bit of walking back or attempting to buy back some of the things that he said later on in the speech. And I'm gonna do a deeper analysis of that once we get further along on this. But I will come back to this. But just remember this. So he will, you know, that night, I mean, him on Friday saying, I don't consider any Trump supporter a threat to the country. I mean, that was maybe 12 hours, maybe 18 hours after he said, while flanked by 2 Marines at a taxpayer-funded event, official White House event, that addressing the nation at a primetime event, he said Trump supporters, or sorry, we'll let him say it again.
Represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic.
So Trump and MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the foundation of the republic. And then 18 hours later, well, you know, I don't consider individual Trump supporters to be a threat to the country.
You know, in context,
it almost sounds like you do.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like it does. Also, in context, he recently, just this last week, was saying that the 2A supporters, well, what are you going to do? We have F-16s with your rifles. We're going to use. He's implying they're going to use military fighter jets to go against anyone who might choose to defend themselves against the country. Anyone who's supporting, trying to maintain their rights on the right. So he's basically saying, if you're one of those Trump supporters that supports guns rights and thinks you're going to defend yourself against the country, well, the country is going to use its military against you. Which, by the way, the U.S. military is not supposed to be used against the citizens. But he's now implied.
Are F-15s like? Are they like optimally? Is their optimal like mission a air to ground engagement?
They can do it just fine.
Can they go after like a person with a rifle?
I mean,
maybe in the desert you guys can do that, but I don't know. I mean, like, there's a lot of woodsy areas in America.
I would ask, how would they distinguish a friendly person with a rifle versus an enemy person with a rifle? But then again, the proof in the pudding, as far as in the Middle East, shows they don't really care.
I don't know. They just pay him to fly the drone.
Well, that's not a drone; it's a fighter plane. But whatever. Yeah, they paid him to fly the plane and drop the bombs. Doesn't matter how many aid workers and kids they got to blow up, right?
Yep. So the gaslighting about what this speech was started immediately, which is completely unsurprising, and I'll go more into why later. But just they said a lot of extreme things. Joe said a lot of extreme things on Thursday night, and then they're going to start trying to gaslight and pull it back. One of the best instances of that gaslighting and trying to claw back some of the things that they were doing there is obviously the imagery of Joe brightly lit with this blood red background behind him, and the way they got the lights set up has these the Marines in almost total shadow. Which did we find that other picture that I was asking for, Dyer?
No, sorry.
The Gallup photo. I probably could have found it, but one of the most egregious versions of the trying to adjust the narrative was from CNN, who noticed that the blood red color behind Joe was, while he's talking about, you know, half the country being an extremist threat to the nation and a national security priority, someone at CNN thought maybe it's the wrong image to have blood red behind him. And so we'll let you watch what they did.
Democracy endures only if
this is the CNN feed.
Respect
watch that
the
deep red in the background.
Republic. Only if
what's happening? Something's happening. Dyer, is the flag behind him turning magenta?
It's getting.
Is it magenta, white, and blue?
Democracy
Yeah,
cannot
is that our new
survive.
national colors? I mean, this is a
when one
national
side believes
policy
there are only
speech, right?
2
Wow,
outcomes
look at
to an
that!
election.
Look at that Marine
Either
on
they win
the right there.
or
Wow,
they
it's
were
just
cheated.
bright, vivid pink
That's where the
behind
MAGA
him. It's
Republicans
so
are.
that's so
Yeah.
strange. Now, that happened over the course of about 30 seconds on the CNN live feed. That was what CNN was showing. The one that we're watching is from C-SPAN, and it stays red the whole time. Every other and actually you can see too, CNN is using the C-SPAN feed because that's the angle that they're at. Oops, I lost it here. Yeah, so CNN is they don't have their own camera there. They're copying the C-SPAN feed because you can see it's from the same angle there. And then all of a sudden, it turns this hot, fiery pink. It's so weird. And so I'll show you we're at the end of the video here. Oh, of course, Twitter is going to buffer it. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? All right, well, I guess Twitter's going to lock up and buffer the video. Thanks, Twitter. Let's see.
Only if.
All right, so here we are at the beginning of the video. And then if I jump to the end, oh, wow, you can see the transition from red
Democracy endures. Democracy endures.
to pink. Red to pink. Better one or two? More authoritarian one or two? And you can really, really see it on the flag in the background, which goes from the traditional red, white, and blue to the magenta, white, and blue. You can see it in his skin tone, too. It goes from a regular human skin tone, which actually is a little bit weird for him. They must have had a lot of makeup on him that night. To this kind of almost looks like he got a sunburn. All of a sudden, he's got this much more vivid skin color. It's very, very strange. Now, the way CNN would have accomplished that is basically just doing basic color adjustment on the red channel. So in studio software, even in this software, which we didn't have time to set it up today, I was going to, but Dyer distracted me. Basically, you can just pick on the color wheel. Okay, anything that's this particular shade of red, I want you to adjust the hue of it to a different color. So now when you're live on TV the way CNN was, you have a limited number of options for that. You can't really just adjust the hue of all the reds to green or something, happy, because that would really throw off everything else, because skin's going to have a little bit of pink into it. Clearly the flags in the background have red in it. Skin tone's going to have red in it, and the flag's got red in it. So there's other things in the shot that have red in it. So you have to be really careful about adjusting that red. It's got to be something that's a near neighbor in the color, and that just so happens to be pink. And so when they adjust it to pink, well, it seems a lot less ominous. That's for damn sure. I mean, look at this versus this. I mean, that's pretty ominous. Pink, it's not so bad. I mean, maybe is that like a pride thing or something like that? I don't know. I mean, the White House has been lit up in pink for women's rights or stuff like that all the time. Maybe that's what this is pink for. But it's a lot less ominous for the pink. But you see, you still screwed up the colors on the flag, and you screwed up his skin tone a little bit. Now, CNN is pretty famous for doing color adjustments. They famously adjusted the color of Joe Rogan's Instagram video when Joe Rogan got COVID. They pushed the yellows way the hell up so that he looked like he had like yellow fever or something. And then they've also done this to Trump, where they make him super orange to the point where white paper that's clearly supposed to be white on screen appears to be orange. You can see it when you look at other stuff, but they boost those colors. Fox News even did that during one of the debates where Trump and Biden were on the same stage. They both had a blue background. The stage background was just one continuous blue image. And for some reason, on the camera angle for Trump, that was side by side with the camera angle for Joe Biden, you could clearly see that the blue background was oranger. It was a different color than the blue background behind Biden, because somebody punched up the orange on Trump's camera to make him look orange. And so CNN does this color manipulation all the time. And so they just very slowly, and you can see they didn't jump cut it. Somebody by hand was very slowly adjusting that color over 30 seconds so that you wouldn't notice an abrupt jump cut. But they didn't want you to notice how authoritarian it was. So while for some reason Joe Biden's people didn't realize that this looks like, authoritarian despotism, because, in all the movies, all the classic movies, Dyer, it's always the good guy that has his fist raised and is flanked by military personnel with a blood red background giving a fiery speech about how he's going to crush his enemies. It's always the good guy, isn't it?
I think that Biden's team, the people he has working for him, make his speeches and to set up these shots, they are the young 20-somethings that just came out of college and are indoctrinated into socialism, and this is what they think looks good. This is what they think is a positive thing, and they probably also thought that because really everything the president does on camera is very scripted and very intentional. I don't think that the red background is an accident. I think that they very much intended for that red color to provide an emotional boost of anger and aggression to the words he's saying, because he's trying to spur people to action against this joint enemy that he has identified.
Yeah, so this is kind of the iconic image for the night. This image is not edited in any way. This is the official Getty image of that night. Getty Images is a famous image hosting site that has, they have tons of stock photos. This was their picture. This is not an edited picture. We didn't edit it. The place that we got it from didn't edit. If you go to Getty Images, this is the image that you'll find for the night. And you see, it's this brightly lit Biden with his fist raised. He's screaming. He's got his brows furrowed because he's angry. And then just blood red for Independence Hall behind him. Yeah, I'm sure that's what the founders imagined when they were debating the Constitution and the Declaration, is that someday we hope that our documents will empower a leader to talk about how half the country are terrorists for not voting for him, and he will drape the building that we are speaking in blood red and have the military flanking him so it looks like they support him. I mean, this looks like a meme where you would have like the laser eyes or something on somebody, and
yes,
you deep fry the background so that it was super red, and you'd boost the contrast so that it's only red and black. And again, this isn't an edited photo. They were able to accomplish that blood red and dark black just by crafting the stage lights. And
it looks like they're trying to make the Dark Brandon meme in real life.
Yes, and the Dark Brandon meme, which we kind of skipped a few shows around the height of that, but Dark Brandon meme was verified to be started by Chinese intelligence, spread around to create a almost kind of a honeypot for the right here in America, trying to get us to start passing around Chinese propaganda, essentially. However, for some reason, Joe Biden's staffers and White House communications directors picked up on this Dark Brandon meme about, him sitting on a throne of, it was the Iron Throne made out of melted AR-15s, and, destroying our jobs and stuff like that. And for some reason they leaned into that, and they thought that it was great and powerful. I mean, to the point where the White House communications director actually tweeted out an image of Joe Biden with an eye patch and the Nazi eagle behind him in the style of the Dark Knight trailer. They were tweeting out, again, this Nazi propaganda was made by Chinese communists in an effort to bait Republicans into accidentally posting Nazi iconography. And then all of a sudden you've got the White House is like, hold our beer, like, we'll do that, we'll post Nazi iconography.
I guess the White House are so used to so many things going viral about him being weak and feckless. They finally saw something going viral, kind of, about showing him in a way of being strong. Like, oh man, we finally got something we can latch onto where we're making it. We're fighting that narrative that he's sleepy, and incompetent.
Yeah. And you think about the World War II icon, imagery and stuff like that. Who was draping their backgrounds in red, and who was draping their backgrounds in, there's. I know it's from a movie, but it was based off of an actual event. Or you got this this classic image of Patton giving a speech in front of a massive wall that's an American flag, like a 2-story tall wall that's the American flag. And then who was the guys that he was fighting? Well, they were giving speeches in front of red draped buildings. that's who.
Yeah, it's not like you couldn't do the flag colors and behind you. Trump does it all the time. His entire his motif is all the American flag. The American flag that the left and the Democrats have been telling us is actually racist and is.
How about this for juxtaposition between how you can give speeches? What's funny too is that the Getty image actually does it at such an angle that it hides the American flag is behind him, but the image hides it because Trump always had the flag on the sides of him.
And he has the full flag, not like one giant bar of red on either side of him that makes it so you don't actually see the flag. That's look at the difference between Trump and Biden. But yeah, this is very much intentional. I think that they miscalculated. They probably thought this was going to come off well, but no, he looks like a dictator. Because he's also speaking like a dictator. So the two things together makes him look like a dictator.
Yeah. All right. So again, we'll go back to the speech here, but just to recap, Joe Biden just said Trump and MAGA extremists are a threat to the foundation of the republic. So let's now it's important to know, what does he think a MAGA Republican is? Like, are you a MAGA Republican? Well, let's find out, because Joe Biden's about to tell you what MAGA Republicans are. And this is going to be really important because it sets the stage for all of the things that this speech means. Because it's very important. If MAGA Republicans are an extremist threat, well, we better have a pretty good definition of who a MAGA extremist is. Let's find out.
Not every Republican embraces their extreme ideology. I know, because I've been able to work with these mainstream Republicans. But there's no question.
So who are the mainstream Republicans that have been working with Joe? Well, mostly the rhinos. We've got Liz Cheney. We got Adam Kinzinger when he's not, crying his eyes out. We have the pedophile rapists at the Lincoln Institute. Or the Lincoln Project, rather. I'm sure that there is a Lincoln Institute who I just smeared horribly. The Lincoln Project, they are full of pedophiles. And they were, supposedly Republicans who only, the only thing that they do is just attack Republicans. So, it's, I don't know if you're really a Republican if that's all you do all day. You've got the Mitt Romneys. You've got back in the day you had, I forgot who I was going to say there. But anyways, who is not MAGA Republicans? Well, it's MAGA Republicans, it's Republicans that just do what Joe Biden wants to do. If you oppose Joe Biden, well, then you're a MAGA Republican. If you just go along with what Joe wants to do, well, then you're a regular mainstream Republican. Because mainstream Republicans, they're just part of the uniparty. They just help the establishment. They just go along with the Democrats and have kind of a controlled opposition for Republican voters to waste their vote on. So those are good ones. But if you, if you disagree with Democrat talking points, if you disagree with the list of insane policies that Dyer went over earlier, like open borders and closing down, oil pipelines and destroying the economy and all those, and having weakness abroad, absolutely just terrible weakness abroad, just total collapse of any kind of American dominance on the world stage. If you disagree with any of that, well, then you're a MAGA Republican. You're not working with Joe. If you're not working with Joe, you're against him. So that's who he's going after.
This is the same guy who said he was best friends with a friggin' Klansman.
It is who he is. Okay.
Yeah, that guy was not bad, but people who support, First Amendment and Second Amendment and strong foreign policies and the security of our nation, they're the extremists.
Well, so Joe gets into the Constitution here. Let's hear what he has to say about how MAGA supporters think about the Constitution.
But there's no question that the Republican Party today is dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans. And that is a threat to this country. These are hard things.
Doubling down that we're a
But I'm
threat
an
to the
American
country.
president, not a president of red America, blue America, but of all America. And I believe it's my duty to level with you, to tell the truth, no matter how difficult, no matter how painful. And here, in my view, is what is true. MAGA Republicans do not respect the Constitution.
Oh, okay. All right. MAGA Republicans do not respect the Constitution. So what's a MAGA Republican again? We just went over that. It's any Republican that doesn't just go along with Joe Biden's policy. If you disagree with his policies, you're a MAGA Republican. Sorry. And what do MAGA Republicans do? Well, they don't respect the Constitution. Yeah, okay, yeah, that checks out. That makes sense. The group that is patriotic, has the slogan, Make America Great Again, that believes in all of the amendments and all of their rights and freedoms as guaranteed by those. Yeah, they're the ones that hate the Constitution. They're the ones that don't respect the Constitution. Yeah, that makes sense. It's not the party of the 1619 Project that doesn't respect the Constitution. It's definitely not the party that says this nation was founded in slavery and white supremacy. They're not the ones that disrespect the Constitution. That's actually how you show fealty and love and reverence for the Constitution, as you talk about how it was written by white supremacists and slaveholders. It's definitely not the party that says the Second Amendment is not an absolute right and has been colluding with tech companies to censor your First Amendment rights and has basically thrown completely out the window your Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights and possibly even your rarely discussed Third Amendment rights with the quartering of soldiers when Joe froze rent and mortgage payments unconstitutionally. No, surely the party that did all of those things, they definitely are the ones that respect and love the Constitution. It's our side who wants to defend the First Amendment, wants to defend the Second Amendment, wants to defend the Third and the Fourth and the Fifth and so on. We're the ones that have no respect for the Constitution. We're the ones who think that maybe there should be a separation of powers between the branches as enumerated by the Constitution. That's pretty radical. That means that you hate the Constitution. If you think that the way the Constitution segments the executive powers from the legislative powers and segments out the judicial powers, if you think that is how it should be, and that the executive should not be overreaching its authority by just canceling $400 billion of student loan debt. If you think that's executive overreach, well, you don't respect the Constitution.
Biden himself has in the last year has said at least 4 times before while running for president that I can't do that because the president doesn't have the power. And then when he became president, did the exact same thing he said he did not have the legal authority to do. So who is the one who's violating the Constitution?
Yeah, that one the list of reasons why that dog don't hunt can just go on forever. But just the audacity to claim that they're the side that respects the Constitution and that we're the side that has no respect for the Constitution is just absolute lunacy. I don't even. Yeah, it's so hard to give the proper emotional weight to that, because it's just kind of yeah, Fox, we know they don't like the Constitution. Yeah, cool. Welcome to 8 years ago. I know, but it's just in the context of the speech, it's wild.
Under the justification of why we are the enemies of the state that need to be crushed. Under that context, this is his justification, and he's describing himself and his own party.
Yes, and part of that too is that there is no lie too big, no hypocrisy so untenable that they will not use it against you. And again, We just watched 3 different clips from Friday talking about the speech, the White House responding to the speech. Joe Biden, even himself, saying this wasn't a political speech. This wasn't a political speech. And if this wasn't a political speech, then it could only be a policy and national priority speech. And there is no lie, no hypocrisy that is too much for them to justify the use of the state against you as a MAGA Republican. Again, what's a MAGA Republican? Anybody that disagrees with Joe Biden. If you don't agree with Joe Biden, then you're a MAGA Republican. And it doesn't matter what it is. They will lie about anything to use the power of the state to identify you as a threat to national security. You are a threat to the foundation of the republic. And how do we deal with threats to the foundation of the republic? Well,
destroy them
by any means necessary. And so, again, I know it's not a new or novel thing that they will flip the tables like that, but in the context of justifying why you are identified as a threat, justifying why Trump supporters and Trump himself are terrorists. Again, Dyer, could you possibly say, well, I think that you're a threat to the country, you're a threat to the foundation of the republic, but I wouldn't call you a terrorist. I wouldn't go that far. I mean, does that in any way make sense, or do you think that Joe's implying that we're all terrorists?
So obviously, I think that the way he's referred to us as terrorists, but also it's not the first time that his party has referred to us as terrorists. They actually called Trump supporters terrorists just for putting flags out in their front yards. This isn't the first time, and it's not unprecedented for them to call us terrorists. But the president to do it on prime time as public policy,
flanked by the military.
Flanked by the military after under the context of having recently said that he would use the military against people who opposed him. Yes, this is the first time he's escalated to this point.
Yeah, and let's watch that clip of Joe Biden talking about using F-15s against us.
And for those brave right-wing Americans who say it's all about keeping America's independent and safe, if you want to fight against the country, you need an F-15. You need something a little more than a gun. No, I'm not joking. Think about this. Think about the rationale we use.
All right.
And he didn't say gun supporters or 2A supporters. He said
right-wingers.
Right-wingers. Because, there are all the people on the left who support gun ownership, particularly the revolutionaries on the left. They believe they need the weapons to have the revolution, right?
Yeah. So and again, who's a right winger? I mean, they will go so far as to identify Jimmy Dore and Tim Pool as right wingers.
Exactly.
So who's right? Are you right? Are you right? Are you to the right of Tim Pool? Are you to the right of Jimmy Dore? Well, then you're a right-wing extremist, and it don't really matter if you got an AR-15 because they got F-15s. So, and
you don't even need guns to change the government. Look in Chicago and California. Look at liberal places where the violence has the political violence there has pushed them to stop prosecuting criminals and stop arresting criminals, because every time they arrest or get in a violent altercation with someone of the wrong race, their city streets get burned down. And they had the desired effect. It didn't require a single gun.
And I want to see, I think one of these is a longer clip that has him talking about who are you going to be shooting at. Let me see if I can find that real quick.
Independent and safe. If you want to fight against the country, you need an F-15. You need something a little more than a gun. No, I'm not joking. Think about this. Think about the rationale we use that's used to provide this. And who are they shooting at? Shooting at these guys behind me.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, if the Dyer, is the U.S. military authorized to operate on U.S. soil against citizens of the United States? Just simple yes or no.
No.
All right. So, I will say, Dyer's not going to say, I will say that because the military is not authorized to operate on U.S. soil against U.S. citizens, if you're a U.S. citizen on U.S. soil and the military is operating against you, fuck yes, you shoot back at them. Yes. Who are you going to be? Yes, Joe, we'll be shooting back at those boys. If they're coming to violate your rights, They're coming in an unconstitutional way. The only manner in which the military is operating against U.S. citizens on domestic soil is if there's some kind of coup. So they are no longer the military of these United States. They are no longer authorized by the Constitution. They are no longer authorized by the Congress, and they're no longer under the leadership of the proper president of the executive branch. So you are under no obligation to submit to tyrants who have it doesn't matter if they're wearing American military uniforms and driving American military vehicles. The Taliban's doing that right now. Just because the Taliban's wearing American military garb and using American military equipment, that doesn't authorize them to just act with the constitutional authority. No. And so the same thing would apply to whoever happens to be operating here on American soil. If Joe Biden is ordering military operations, those are illegal orders. You as a civilian are under no obligation to submit to illegal orders, and don't. So yes, Joe, if you're going to send the military after American citizens, then those boys should expect to get shot back.
Yes.
They absolutely should be.
I think he wants to conflate the military of the right this moment, where our boys and girls who are serving our country, and for the most part, are heroes who people love because they protect our country, and they are doing self-sacrifice to make it so people at home can live with the constitutional rights that they have. Now, in the hypothetical situation he's created, where he's now has ordered the military troops to enforce his edicts on the mainland, those are not the same people. They are no longer the good guys. So yes, if they are no longer the good guys, you treat them differently. The good guys, I promise you, will no longer be in the military. Will probably be in jail if those orders are given.
As a citizen of the United States, you are encouraged by the Declaration of Independence and by the Constitution, particularly the Second Amendment. You are encouraged to fantasize about what you would do if a tyrannical government comes for you. You are encouraged to fantasize and prepare for that. The government, Joe Biden as the president of the executive, is not authorized, is not encouraged to fantasize about what he would do if he decides to come for you as a citizen. So, no, it is not even close to the same thing. You are perfectly authorized. You are perfectly fine. It is perfectly your right, and it is right for you to fantasize and plan for that occurrence. It is absolutely immoral, unconstitutional, and not correct for Joe Biden to be doing the same thing, especially during political speeches. I mean, that is off the charts absurd. So what does Joe talk about during his political speeches? Well, he fantasizes about using F-15s against American citizens. What does he talk about during policy speeches like the one that we're watching right now? Well, he identifies that one of these MAGA extremists, they're a real threat, and we're going to have to do something about that threat. Well, what's he going to do about it? Well, he just talked about it in his political speech a few days ago. He's going to deploy F-15s. That's the only thing that you can take from it. And again, I will reiterate, the Declaration of Independence and the Second Amendment both authorize, give you the right. Well, they don't give you the right. They enumerate your right, and they encourage you to fantasize and plan for a tyrannical government coming to take your rights and oppress you. They encourage you to plan and fantasize about that. Joe Biden, on the other hand, the president of the United States, is not encouraged to plan and fantasize about how he might come for you and oppress you. Agree or disagree, Dyer?
Completely agree.
Alrighty.
Sorry,
I take your silence that you disagree with me. All right.
I agree with you.
All right. Well, perfect. Okay, so we're gonna go back into. We're gonna keep watching the speech here. We're gonna jump ahead a few seconds, but let's remember back to an earlier part of the speech where we were talking about it's not all Republicans, it's just the MAGA Republicans. It's just the MAGA Republicans that are an extremist threat to the foundation of this republic. Well, what constitutes a MAGA Republican extremist? Well, we went through a little bit of that. If one of the litmus tests is, do you agree with Joe? Do you go along with Joe's policy? If you do, then you're not a MAGA extremist Republican. If you don't, then you're probably a MAGA extremist Republican. If you disagree with Joe's policies on anything, you're probably a MAGA extremist Republican. Joe's going to go on to continue providing litmus tests, so you can at home, you can fill out this quick survey, and you can find out if you're a MAGA Republican extremist. It's like those tests in the back of like a Cosmo magazine. Let's see some other things that you might be a MAGA extremist if you agree with these things.
Deniers to undermine democracy itself. MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards to an America where there is no right to choose.
Oh, okay. So if you're pro-life, if you're determined to bring America back to being pro-life, then you are a MAGA extremist. So he tried to buy it back a little bit by saying, well, MAGA extremists and Trump, they're a threat to the Republic, but not all Republicans are MAGA extremists. Okay. So he's walking it back a little bit, and then he walks it back forward a little bit when he says, well, if you disagree with me, then yeah, you're probably a MAGA extremist. And then he jumps it forward with this. Well, if you're pro-life, well, then you're a MAGA extremist. If you're, any of 5 out of 9 Supreme Court justices, well, you got Amy Coney Barrett, you've got Brett Kavanaugh, you got Gorsuch, and the other two, Thomas and Alito. Wow, I did all 5 of them without even having to look it up. Look at me go. If you're any one of those Supreme Court justices, well, they're mega extremists.
It doesn't end there either, because they see anyone who is actually supports any kind of restrictions on abortion, but they still are pro-abortion. They still see them as being opposed to the right to abortion. So they would say that some of the people who support Biden right now are also extremists because they support some limitations on abortion. Yeah.
So we've identified it's and I don't know if anybody else has really talked about this in this way, but it's kind of bad when you've identified 71 million Americans as terrorists that are a threat to the nation. And then now we've added to that 5 out of the 9 Supreme Court justices. Yeah, they're also terrorists. They're also MAGA Republican extremists that are a threat to the foundation of the Republic. That's pretty scary that we have 5 terrorists sitting on the Supreme Court. That's more than half of that entire branch, which, again, the beginning of the speech is all about the justification for things that he would like to do to you, like, I don't know, deploying F-15s against you. It's all about what is he going to do to the civilians. But this little bit here starts identifying other branches, perhaps some of the legislatures. You got a lot of Republican Congress people who are putting forward pro-life bills. So you've now had the identification of half the civilian base as possible terrorists, or actual terrorists. And now you've got specifically parts of the judicial branch have been identified as terrorist threats. And probably several members of the legislature have now been identified as terrorist threats. I mean, by golly, what is that? What is that article that power that the president has, where they can, in times of emergency, like dissolve the government and reform it under the executive branch? Well, if you've got I think it's Article 42 or something like that.
69.
No.
66.
I don't think so.
No.
But this is something that Bush made. It's a continuity of government order, but basically it would allow the president in a time of emergency, which, I would say that it's a pretty big emergency if you've got the judicial branch and the legislative branch both taken over by terrorists and half the country is terrorists. I would say that's a pretty big emergency, wouldn't you? Yes. So now, is he going to do that? I don't think so, but is this maybe paving the way, creating the justification for packing the courts? Yeah. Is this creating justification for doing all kinds of things? Yes. And that's what I'll get into here in a bit here, is this speech is providing some of the justifications for things that will come later. Alrighty. So, and again, this is not a political speech. We went over that multiple times here. This isn't a political speech. So you thought that maybe pro-life and pro-choice, that was pro-life and pro-abortion, that was a political issue. Well, no. That's national priorities now. This is national security. So it's not about politics anymore. You don't just get the option. It's not covered under the First Amendment to talk about being pro-life. No, you're actually a threat to the republic, and it's a national defense priority now. That's what the speech is about. It's about national defense priorities. So again, don't confuse this with political rhetoric, because Joe Biden and his team were very adamant this is not political. So don't try to confuse this with a political stump speech, because it's not. They said so. Let's see here. So we went over several attempts to try to buy back some of this rhetoric. So right off the bat, all MAGA Republicans are terrorists. They're extremists. They're a threat to the republic. But not all Republicans are MAGA extremists. And then we bought it back a little bit, walked it back a little bit. Then we walked it back forward a few times. And then, we saw the clips from Friday where they walked it back again, where Joe's like, well, I don't think Trump supporters are a threat to the republic, even though I literally said that exact phrase last night. So we got this kind of walk forward, walk back, walk forward, walk back. So it does seem very clear that Joe Biden's speech on Thursday overreached. It way overreached on the rhetoric. But overreaching on rhetoric is how you push the Overton window. The Overton window is the boundary where things are seen as acceptable. So an example of the Overton window is if you look at LGB rights over the last 40 years, from the 80s up through today. You had this constant push, and it kind of shifted public perception slowly over 40 years. That's the Overton window. It's what does the public deem as acceptable? The things that the 1980s public deemed as acceptable were not gay marriage, and then the things that the 2020 public deems as acceptable is gay marriage for some people. Again, it's the public overall perception. So you just got to shift it. Not every person, but you just have to shift enough people. There's a lot of examples where they've shifted the Overton window over the years on many things. I would say Marxism and communism is a pretty big one. But the ability for Joe Biden to be an authoritarian despot and to actually use those F-15s against you, and to do other things such as, having the FBI raid his political adversaries or arresting political commentators, which actually, I take that one back, so we didn't fact check that one. Forget that one. But those sorts of things, those can only happen if the Overton window, if public perception deems those as acceptable. And you don't get there overnight. You gotta push on that boundary. So this speech was very clearly overreaching that boundary, which is why they had to walk it back so many times. It's why they had to do the but, and the caveats and the caveats and the caveats, and then just, Joe Biden just completely denying one of his key lines from the speech by saying, I don't think that all Trump supporters are a threat to the republic, even though I literally said that last night. So clearly they know that they overreached, but again, the overreach is the point, because that's how you push the boundary. We're seeing that, and we're going to go through some videos and some Twitter threads from other leftists where they love the speech. They think it's great that Joe Biden's going to war with us. They want the F-15s. And so you can see that the boundary is getting pushed. Let's see here. So I'm not actually worried about this particular speech, but I am worried about where the next speech goes, because now that this kind of speech has precedent, even if it was deemed a little bit unacceptable, they can do a similar speech again. It'll be deemed more acceptable. It'll push that window over again until the point where a speech like what you saw on Thursday, that'll just be commonplace.
It's conditioning.
Yes, that'll just be common. It's very common just to call your political adversaries, extremist terrorist threats to the republic. I mean, that's very common. It's commonplace. It's okay. It's okay to talk about that sort of stuff with Marines flanking behind you and threatening F-15s against people who want the right to keep and bear arms. So that's what the problem is. This sets a precedent for more speeches like this that will, again, make that idea that, yeah, MAGA Republicans, they are a threat to the Republic. We do got it. That's just like ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and we got to make sure that they aren't running planes into our buildings. We really got to make sure.
The problem is how far down the path of conditioning we already are, as signified by how little outrage this speech gave. I mean, it's getting outrage, but the fact that it's only getting this much outrage is a sign of how much the Overton window has already been shifted, and that we have a large part of the country who is pretty okay with labeling people that disagree with them as Nazis, punching them, supporting violence against them, supporting unpersoning them, taking away their ability to feed themselves, have a job, be part of the economy. We already have a building swell of support for that, and people willing to go out and conduct violence. And back in the 1930s, Germany didn't just all at once hate Jews. It didn't. Not only did they just hate Jews, not only hate Jews, but not only did those who hated Jews, not only were they willing to massacre or overlook the massacre of a people. This takes time of conditioning the populace with consistent and determined or intentional media inputs, putting into our movies, into our TV shows, into our radio broadcast, putting into our culture these ideas that this is okay, and constantly incrementally pushing us towards the idea that the violence and removal of people that they don't like is okay. And once they have enough support, it doesn't require a majority. It just requires enough support that those that support it will tattle on and suppress the opinions of those who disagree.
Yeah, exactly. It's about that incrementalism. Biden can't just take to the podium and declare martial law and order the military to start rounding us up. You have to go through some phases of escalation first. And sure, the speech seems really extreme now, but again, if he gives a few more, now that there's precedent for a speech like this, if he gives some more, and then he has the media behind him, and we're going to get into a story later today about how the White House has been coordinating with the social media giants to censor certain ideas, which is the most unconstitutional thing since, like, I don't know,
sliced
a while.
Bread.
Yeah, exactly. Then maybe it won't. After you get through that for a few months or years, I don't know. It seems like incrementalism can run pretty fast these days. Then all of a sudden, maybe it doesn't seem quite so extreme that he's declared martial law. Maybe it doesn't seem quite so extreme that we're seeing, more arrests. Well, it's you just had some of the lawyers for the January 6th defendants. Their lawyers were being arrested. You've had basically every person that was part of the Trump administration has been arrested. So, I mean, you already have you had a Republican gubernatorial candidate from Michigan was arrested. You're already starting to see arrests. They're probably not going to have Joe stand up in front of a blood red White House and say, "Today is the day we're going to start rounding them up." No, it'll just happen. There won't be an announcement. It's already starting to happen.
They're already rounding them up. They're already removing them from the board, so they can't vote. They can't speak for the candidates. They can't defend their people.
Bank. They can't shop.
They're already rounding people up.
Yes.
It's just they're doing it slowly enough, and they're starting with the people that they have the best excuses for, and they're removing them. It's the old adage of that first they came for, but not for me.
Well, and, we've talked about that, are we in the then suddenly phase? And we're getting pretty close if we're not in the then suddenly phase. But we're definitely in the they came for phase, where they came for your neighbor 2 houses down. We're in that phase right now. Now, how long does it take to get from that phase to, and then they came for me? I don't know. I don't know. It might not be super long. The answer to are we in the then suddenly phase is probably the answer to the how soon are they going to come for you. But Joe is clearly laying out an argument and a foundation that that's what needs to happen. Trump gave campaign speeches speculating about whether or not it was right to arrest Hillary Clinton for very specific, articulable, and enumerable crimes. Joe Biden's talking about whether or not it's okay to arrest and detain his just people who didn't vote for him. Basically.
Yes. Whereas Biden is going after an entire amorphous group of people who just disagree with him and think he shouldn't be president and support a different president. He's attacking those people and calling them extremists. Whereas Trump, they reference Trump's speech where he's talking about how MS-13 are animals and how some of the people coming across the border are literal rapists and child traffickers. And they say that, oh, look, he's attacking migrants. No, he was attacking very specific groups of criminals, not all migrants. But they'll try to equate that speech saying, well, you weren't upset when Trump did it, so why are you upset when Biden's doing it? They're very, very different things.
Yes. So there are, ideally, the Democrats don't want to get the military involved in subduing the country. That's really messy, and it doesn't look real good at the $1 million galas in Europe, and doing all the stuff with all the other leaders of the Western world and all that sort of stuff. It just doesn't feel right. It's kind of icky. So ideally, they don't want to get the military involved, but Joe's kind of laying the foundation that if the carrot doesn't work, well, we got the stick right behind him. We got two of them right there, actually, at the Marines. What is their best hope for this the speech? Again, it's to shift the Overton window. And what does that look like for you? Well, you already have some sense of it. We just talked a little bit about it. But it doesn't have to be rounding people up. The next logical, reasonable step about this is that your company might start making some more social media policies. Maybe social media in general starts making more policies. Well, the government's identified MAGA extremism as a threat to the nation. So, we can't allow that stuff to trend. We can't allow these people to have accounts. There's probably going to be whole new terms of services coming out in the next few weeks around what Joe just said, that you cannot be. Of course, we can't have domestic terrorists on Facebook. Are you kidding me? And then your company. Well, we can't have domestic extremists and terrorists working for a company, guys. I mean, we can't, definitely not. You can't have an American flag, on your cubicle. That's MAGA extremism. We noticed that you got a bumper sticker on your car in your employee parking spot that it's this Trump 2020. We just can't have terrorists working for this company. I'm sorry. It's not our decision. It's it's the state. It's the current policy of the United States of America. They wouldn't lie to us, would they? And we've seen that already, but this is laying the groundwork for a type of cancellation that, well, frankly, we've not even come close to seeing at this level yet. That's what this is gonna do. That's what pushing the Overton window looks like. Is the German people, and well, actually the Chinese people are a much better example of it. The Chinese people did most of the most horrific things to themselves. There's all kinds of stories of little communities, little farming towns where there would only be a very small detachment of soldiers there from the CCP, the People's Liberation Army, and they would direct the townspeople to do horrific things to each other to keep themselves in line. It's not really going to be about what the military does to us. It's going to be about what your neighbor does to you. And that's really what Joe Biden was calling for here, is he's calling on, and we'll get into this down the line here, is he's calling on his fellow Democrat voters that you have the power. You have the power to stop this. He doesn't want to use the military. He wants to use his foot soldiers like Antifa against you. And I would imagine Antifa took this as marching orders. They want to say Trump was giving marching orders to the Proud Boys when he said, stand down and stand by. Well, boy, oh boy, did Joe Biden put that to shame. If that was a dog whistle from Trump, then this was a trumpet from Biden. Dyer agrees.
Yeah, so the Chinese residents who were ratting out their own people and committing acts of violence against their own people, they all had the same motive as the people in any tyrannical regime would have, is that they want to show loyalty so they can be protected. They're scared, they want to be protected from the violence of the regime, so they will throw you under the bus and be looking for. It doesn't matter if you even are an opponent of the regime. They have to find someone to say, to tattle on, to say this person is actually talking bad about the Fuhrer. They finger point at people and they start going after people who actually would have been loyalists, eating themselves just to try to prop up how loyal they are to try to protect themselves from the power of the state. So a lot of this was going on with the Nazis, is after they ran out of Jews to point the finger at, they just started tattling on each other for things that didn't actually happen.
Yeah. Alrighty, so let's keep going here.
Brutally attacking law enforcement, not as insurrectionists who placed a dagger at the throat of our democracy, but they look at them as patriots. And they see their MAGA failure to stop a peaceful transfer of power after the 2020 election as preparation for the 2022 and 2024 elections.
All right.
No.
That is going to
sure.
be... Go for it, Dyer.
The people, the conservatives and libertarians, don't look at the people who are committing actual acts of violence on Jan 6 as patriots. We look at the people who are walking through with the freaking podium and stuff as being fools. We don't we see the people who just dumbly walked in as have been foolish, but not as foolish as people were actually trying to break.
So I don't necessarily
patriots.
I think it's pretty obvious to everybody that the J6 does not really represent the core of even Trump voters or even MAGA supporters. So it definitely represents the core of the FBI. But I think that this I want to replay this bit because I think that this is really one of the most important parts of the speech. In fact, I think a lot of people need to be focusing on this a little bit more, but I got some stuff to say about this. I want to replay it, and I think this was really important.
And they see their MAGA failure to stop a peaceful transfer of power after the 2020 election as preparation for the 2022 and 2024 elections.
All right. So this whole speech is about laying a groundwork argument for why they will be allowed to oppress you. So this is now laying the groundwork for election interference. Because, well, if J6 was J6 was preparation, that was just a dry run for 2022 and 2024. Well, if we're expecting in 2022 and 2024, if we're expecting another J6, well, what did we have to do for the first J6? Well, we had to deploy 35,000 troops to DC.
That's more than many nations' armies.
Yeah, that's like at the height of at the peak, not at the minimum, at the peak of the Afghan war. I mean, that's like a third of the number of people that were in country from us. Currently, that was, at the time that happened, we'd had like maybe 6,000 soldiers deployed in Iraq and Syria, I think.
I think it was 6,500, yeah.
Yeah. And so DC required something like 5 times as many just to, take care of 800 MAGA grandmas. This is going to justify any kind of overreach from the executive in 2022 and 2024. Now, you will remember from the 2020 election and just from your civics lessons in general that U.S. elections are handled at the local level. The federal government does not have any authority over elections. Those are governed at the local level. It's considered an interference for the executive to take a role in that. Now, the executive has been invited to, I guess, consult and perhaps secure certain things, and that's probably overreach as well. But if we're worried that like half the country is going to start performing terrorist actions for the 2022 midterms and the 2024 general election, well, anything's justified. Anything's justified. And this speech is starting to lay the groundwork, the framework for shifting the Overton window. It's putting the seeds of ideas into people's heads. Now all the mainstream media knows, well, we got, T-minus 2 months, 60 days to go before the 2022 midterms. Well, we've got to make sure that we've got all of our stories set up, that, it's justified that the FBI had to go in and shut down this polling location because, well, MAGA extremists. And the FBI knows, well, we better start ginning up some false flags because we don't want to make Joe Biden a liar. That would be awful. And Antifa is now going to feel, and their counterpart BLM, they're going to feel justified and vindicated that, well, we need to start planning ops to protect, quote unquote, protect and defend our local polling locations. After all, Joe Biden said it's up to us. We have to defend our polling locations. I have a prediction I gave to Dyer a few weeks ago, and I'll make it here on the show. This is completely context independent. I just think that these things will happen. I'm not saying why they'll happen or what it means or what will lead up to them. Just in general, I think that you will see either in the 2022 or in the 2024 election. I think that you will see at least one polling location shut down by Antifa action, and I think you'll see at least one other polling location shut down by the FBI for whatever reason. They'll come up with one. Now, that may happen in 2022 or 2024. Maybe both if we're unlucky. And the reason for that is because I am seeing a pattern right now that the Democrats have this pincer movement of Antifa at the civilian level coming and harassing everybody else. And then on the state level, you have the FBI harassing Republicans and conservatives. So you have this official state action coming down and tyrannizing their adversaries, the conservatives. And then at the same time, you have this anarchist action from Antifa at the street level, terrorizing conservatives and their political enemies. It's coming from both directions, which is not that I want to say it's unprecedented. It's just that when you have both these civilian militias and also state action coordinated against the population, you typically get to Nazi Germany or communist China or Soviet Russia. That's
and
usually
a large part of what you're talking about right now is not the selective enforcement. So they don't enforce anything or stop the Antifa or BLM from doing any of the aggressive things they're doing, the violent things they're doing. But if you were to defend yourself, if a conservative group were to do a counter protest to protect a polling location or to stop an injustice, like a street's being locked down, those people who are counter protesting, the conservatives, would be held accountable. They'd have the full force of the law and government used against them, but it wouldn't happen to Antifa.
Yeah. And let's not forget what J6 means to the Democrats. I know we all kind of think of it as a joke at this point, but the Democrats have likened January 6th to the Holocaust, to September 11th, and to the bombing of Pearl Harbor. So why would Joe Biden reference those unless there was at least some thought, some plan, or at least the possibility that, well, maybe the federal government's going to have to get involved with the, polling locations. I mean, what I'm saying sounds crazy, but if you think about it a little bit, it's maybe not that crazy. So that's my prediction, is that sometime in the next two elections, will see a polling location shut down by the FBI for whatever reason, and one shut down by Antifa for whatever reason. And if I'm really unlucky enough to be correct, that'll be multiple ones. But I guess we'll stand by for that. Stand down and stand by for that prediction.
You just called for violence.
I did call for violence. I did not call for violence. Alrighty. So, Joe Biden continues, and his continuation in his words do not dispel any of what I just said. Let's listen.
They tried everything last time to nullify the votes of 81 million people.
Yeah, we went to the courts.
This time,
they're
determined to succeed in thwarting the will of the people. That's why respected conservatives like Federal Circuit Court Judge Michael Ludwig has called Trump and the extreme MAGA Republicans, quote, a clear and present danger to our democracy.
So he just did a Trump thing there. He's like, well, I'm not saying they're a clear and present danger to democracy, but people are saying that. I wouldn't call them that, but people are saying that, Dyer.
Yeah, I think that the not allowing for transparency and not allowing people to look into discrepancies in the voting system and things that there has been a lot of stories that come out that give a lot of credence to concerns about certain states and what the results would have been if certain tampering hadn't happened. Not allowing people to have that transparency and punishing them for it, saying that they're a threat to democracy for looking into that. That itself is a threat to democracy because the confidence in our voting system is paramount. There has to be 100% transparency, and there has to be harsh punishments for people who are trying to subvert it. And it is his party that was subverting it, that caused problems, and it is the Republicans, it has been Trump, who were asking for legitimate transparency requests for legitimate problems that have been investigated and found to be true.
Well, and he's not necessarily wrong that some of the Republican rhetoric is a threat to voter integrity and democracy. Like, for instance, when you have sweeps of Republicans whose basically mainline party position is that, well, the Democrats rigged the voting, so it doesn't work. So, it really doesn't matter if you vote or not. It's just a Democrat trick. So don't really worry about voting. You don't need to worry about voting in the special election because the Democrats are just going to steal it anyways, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that they won Georgia, and all of the terrible things that happened as a result of that. It's actually rather ridiculous that the Republicans have taken on any kind of idea that, well, voting doesn't work. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but for a political party to take the mainline party position to be, well, the votes are rigged, I mean, do we think that that's going to in any way like encourage people like, oh yeah, my vote really matters. I definitely better go take the time to go vote. Right now in Alaska, they tried ranked choice voting for, I believe, the first time, or it's something that they've had for not very many elections. But basically, long story short, the Republican lost, who I believe that was, what's her name? She was the governor and she ran with McCain.
Shit.
Why can't I remember her name?
She can see Russia from her home, though.
She can. Is it something with a P? Gosh, I'm so awful at this. Why am I forgetting this? Dyer's at least got COVID fog. I don't know what I got. I'm just stupid. Anyways, you guys know who I'm talking about because I don't. But she lost, unfortunately. I believe it was a bid for a Congress seat. Well, the Republicans are all complaining that it's ranked choice voting, and they don't really have any reasons why ranked choice voting is bad, other than it's just it's different. And the Democrats, they're tricksters, and yes, the Democrats are tricky tricksters. But if they're going to do ranked choice voting, then that's the game. That's the rules of the game. Don't go and tell your constituency, well, ranked choice voting is just a Democrat conspiracy. They're not going to go vote, you idiot. And so you have right now a lot of Republicans talking about that, how the ranked choice voting is not even worth participating in because it's just a Democrat trick. And then you've got, in general, saying similar things about regular voting, first past the post voting, like what you had in Georgia. And it's just absolutely insane to me that you have mainstream Republican ideology is just
Palin. There's
Palin. Thank you. I was right with the P. That it's just mainstream Republican idea that voting doesn't work. That we got to get past that. If you hear somebody saying that, shut them down. Shut them down. Ranked choice voting, personally, we're not going to go through how it all works right now because it's a little bit complicated. But one of the things the Republicans could do is educate their voters on ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting works differently than first past the post voting. Ranked choice voting could also allow MAGA candidates who are maybe a little bit beyond what a regular Republican would vote for, maybe something that even a walkaway Democrat might vote for, who normally under a third party banner would never get elected, ever. in a regular first-past-the-post system. However, in ranked choice voting, one of the benefits of it is it allows third-party candidates to be viable because of the way it allows you to vote for multiple people in the rank order that you would prefer to have them. Now, instead of explaining that to the Republican voter base, instead of offering a more diverse slate of candidates, because what ranked choice voting allows you to do is you can vote for more than one candidate, but give them priority. So what's the solution to that? Well, the Republicans should offer more candidates. If you can vote for your 5 favorite candidates, why would the Republicans only put up one candidate and then tell you, well, ranked choice voting doesn't work? How's that going to work? It's not. For the Republicans, at least, what they should do is be educating the voters on how ranked choice works, and then they should be offering more candidates. And local MAGA groups or libertarian groups should be putting up their candidates into these ranked choice elections and educating the voter. Ranked choice could be a great way of how we can get power back from the uniparty of the Republican establishment and the Democrat establishment. It could be an amazing thing, but instead the Republican base is just like, oh, I don't understand it. I'm a MAGA-tard, just like the Democrats said I was, and I don't understand these ranked choices and all that stuff. Don't be the idiot that they think that you are. And right now, you have a lot of mainstream Republicans encouraging you to be the idiot that the Democrats think that you are. Don't be an idiot. Go out and vote. Even if you think the Democrats are going to steal it, all the more reason to make it harder for them to steal it. If you don't understand ranked choice voting and you live in a ranked choice voting state, go learn. Educate yourself. Don't be an idiot. Don't be the dotard that Joe Biden is and that their party thinks that you are. And if you are a Republican candidate, who's obviously, I would encourage all Republican candidates to listen to this show. Don't just assume that your voters are stupid and they can't understand anything more than Democrat bad. They tricksters. That's what the Democrats do. The Democrats presume that their voters are idiots. And for the most part, they're right. Republicans, don't assume that your voters are idiots. Assume that maybe they just have never heard of ranked choice voting before and they don't know how it works. And it's your job as a Republican Party and as the candidates to educate them on that. Rant over.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great system. Actually, it would be far more fair. I know Trevor made a note that it did away with primaries. I think that regardless of you losing primaries, which, by the way, is a big organization, the federal, big political organization that is limiting what kind of candidates we have available, putting rules on who can or cannot run under the Republican or Democrat banner, which is giving them a lot of power over our politics, which is inappropriate. It allows them to put in rhino candidates, support them. I think it would probably be far better if we allowed more people to have a better chance of when running. And I think simply people understanding how the system works would probably be far better than telling them that you have no hope because the system is different.
Yeah.
Regardless, let's move on.
Yeah, regardless, the correct response is not, oh, well, the voting's rigged, don't vote. Idiots. All right. Let's see here. What else has Joe got to say?
But while the threat to American democracy is real, I want to say as clearly as we can, we are not powerless in the face of these threats. We are not bystanders in this ongoing attack on democracy.
Powerless. We got the FBI, we got the military, and we got Antifa.
There are far more Americans.
Pick your fighter.
Far more Americans from every background and belief who reject the extreme MAGA ideology than those that accept it.
So, again, phrasing this in a way that, the speech seemed very similar to what you might have seen, if you're in your late 20s, early 30s, or older, you may remember some of the Bush-era speeches about the war on terror. This speech seemed really similar to that. And, I think it's pretty easy and pretty obvious to gin up American patriotism that, we can stop those terrorists. It's up to everybody. And now it's like the same kind of speech, same kind of rhetoric, but you're just talking about like your neighbor down the street. So, it's a little concerning that Joe Biden's talking about you have the power to stop MAGA extremists, because he's kind of talking to Antifa and Antifa supporters there. I mean, I don't know who else he'd be talking to with "you have the power to stop this." Alrighty. Let's see here. Let's jump ahead a few. 9:32. I don't know what's here, but I put the timestamp in the notes.
That's why tonight I'm asking our nation to come together, unite behind the single purpose of defending our democracy regardless of your ideology. We're all called by duty and conscience to confront extremists who put their own pursuit of power above all else. Democrats, independents, mainstream Republicans, we must be stronger, more determined, and more committed to saving American democracy than MAGA Republicans are to destroying American democracy.
That was quite the mouthful of tyranny for him.
Fox, do you feel more united right now?
Oh yeah, super united.
Oh.
Now again, remember, this was not a political speech. This was a policy speech. Joe Biden's not encouraging you to go out to vote because that'd be politics. It can't be. I mean, that'd be political. So if he's encouraging you to like unite against a extremist force that is going to destroy your country, well, what's he? If it's not voting that he's talking about, what's he advocating for there? He's advocating for direct action against MAGA extremists. I mean, it's your duty of conscience, after all, as a patriot to defend your foundation.
They're the enemy.
Yeah, you gotta
to the country.
Patriotic to defend Joe's democracy foundations. Badabadoo. Yeah. So I think that you can say these sorts of things in a political rally, and then they're political rhetoric. But if you take that out of political rhetoric and you put it into a official White House position policy speech, all of a sudden the context becomes very, very different.
Well, even Trump, when he was doing his speeches, he was going after individual political leaders and people who attacked him. He wasn't going after voters. Yes. He was going after the leaders of the party and their opinions and their policies.
Most of Trump's enemies had names. Like most of them had specific names and very long resumes that had government positions on them.
And lots of funny names for them.
Yes. Most of Biden's enemies are just people who didn't vote for him.
Yes. Trump wanted to earn your vote. He didn't want to suppress your vote.
One more timestamp in here, and I don't know what it is. Let's find out.
There are dangers around us we cannot allow to prevail. We here, you've heard it, more and more talk about violence as an acceptable political tool.
Yeah, I wonder by who.
In this country.
No.
It's not. It can never be an acceptable tool. So I want to say this plain and simple. There is no place for political violence in America, period. None, ever.
All right, so again, who's he talking to? He's talking to MAGA Republican extremists. And again, this is another example of there is no lie, there's no hypocrisy, there's no gaslighting, there's no pink lighting. That's too much for them to not justify turning on you and to oppress you and to do something about you. I mean, this is, again, not a political speech. This is a U.S. policy speech. This is a national defense priority speech, because that's the kind of speeches that you give with Marines standing behind you, that you give from the official White House podium, that you give with taxpayer-funded stage management. This is not a political speech. It's policy, national priorities.
So
any lie, again, I don't even have to go into why that is the most absurd lie, that our side is a side that's talking about political violence and that we're the ones that are always being violent and burning down cities and all that sort of stuff. It's on its face obviously a lie. But again,
Fox, when we do it, it's political violence. Or sorry, if we do anything, if we just exist, have an American flag, or are going to a rally, that's political violence. But when they have riots in the streets and burn buildings down, that is mostly peaceful. And
the problem with that, the problem with the two narratives on that is that there's essentially no room for discussion anymore. There's almost zero, probably already zero ability to talk politic, discuss our way back out of this. They are either so deluded or so committed to the lie. They're so committed to the lie that there is just no more room for conversation at this point, which is why we've now arrived at the point where, well, this isn't just about conversation anymore. This is about national priorities. This is about having the military behind me while I talk about who. We have to identify who. The next speech may be about what. What do we do with them? This speech was about who is it that we have to do something to? Who's the threat? What are they going to do to us? The next speech may be, what are we going to do to them to stop them from doing that? They kind of touched on that a little bit here. Mostly the speech was about identifying 71 million Trump voters as terrorists. The next
and to
speech,
justify their actions.
Yeah, the next speech may well be about what. Now we know what we do about them in one-off situations. We got the FBI out there, but the FBI, they've only got so much capacity. They can only do so many raids on Trump and people from the previous administration. They can only false flag maybe like 2 or 3 fake terrorist events per year. I mean, it's a really limited bandwidth. The ATF, they can't be all everywhere at once. So at some point there'll have to be a discussion. I mean, 71 million people, that's a lot of terrorists. At some point there'll have to be a discussion about what do we do with them in bulk. This speech was about how to identify them. The next speech may be about what to do with them.
Yep.
Alrighty. Well, there was 15 more minutes of this that we're not going to go through. There is a spot at the end where he kind of caps it off with like all of his legislative achievements and how great and strong the economy is. So, just in case you thought he was lying about the other part, he really sold it with, well, the economy is doing great and it's doing great. And I'm going to say the economy is doing great, which lends credence that all the stuff I said before is probably true too. Not just capping it off with like the grandest lie ever. I mean, geez, if you had any kind of, well, maybe some of what he said was true. If by the end of the speech he goes, yeah, and by the way, the economy's booming, best numbers of our lives, you can be like, oh, wow, if he's going to lie like that about that one, well, he's probably lied about every other thing in the previous 24 minutes. That was pretty obvious. Alrighty. So some other key points from this is earlier in the week before the speech, there was this new phrase that was kind of, it didn't have a lot of time to get some traction before the speech came out. But there was this new phrase going around called semi-fascism. Semi-fascism. Joe Biden was using it in speeches. Other White House staffers were using it. I think Kerry, she was using it, semi-fascism. And we really barely got a chance to kind of digest and get into that notion before Joe dropped this big bomb speech on us. But basically the term semi-fascism was kind of a teaser trailer for what the speech was going to be. And calling the speech, it also set up the speech and the term semi-fascism, identifying semi-fascists, that MAGA supporters are semi-fascists, and also probably extremist terrorists, that sets up military and police action against domestic targets. It sets up the excuse. Doesn't necessarily set up the authorization or the constitutionality or the legality of it, but it sets up the reason, which sometimes all you need is a reason. There's a lot of things that have happened throughout history that were not legal, not constitutional, but it had public support, so it happened. And so if you want to do something and you're never going to find a reason to do it in the law or in the Constitution, well, you're going to have to start ginning up a narrative. You're going to have to start building that public support for doing something that's unconstitutional. Anything's permissible if the public wants it to happen. So what are they doing? Well, the semi-fascism moniker, this speech, starting to set that up, that reason, that support for military and police action against domestic targets. And calling us semi-fascist also leaves them a little bit of slack for later. You always got to one-up yourself. So if you just come right out and call us fascist, well, there's not a lot of room to maneuver there. But if you call us semi-fascist, well, now you got room to maneuver. At some point, we can be full-fledged fascists, maybe even super MAGA fascists. But this gives them the room to one-up. It was bad when they were semi-fascist. That was manageable. But now that they're full fascists, now we got to send in the troops. Now we got to send in the F-15s. Now we got to start shutting down polling locations and arresting GOP representatives and candidates.
The tragic irony of Biden calling someone else a fascist, the Democrats calling the Republicans fascist. They are the fascists. What part of Republican policy has been fascist?
Allowing the Democrats to come to power.
That's not fascism either, though. That's not the definition of fascism.
Well, if you allow fascists to come to power, are you any better than them? All right, so I have a little bit of a rant on the nature of being reactionary. So one of the things that the Marxists and the leftists like to call our side is that we're the reactionaries. They're trying to make progress, and we're reacting to their progress by screaming no. And it's meant to be kind of a slur, but it also is technically true. Usually our side just wants to be like left alone. We're conservative. We're fine with the status quo. It's just, keep on keeping on type of a thing. And when an outside influence like Marxism and leftism comes in and they start trying to change things, we then react to it. That's what being a reactionary is. Again, they try to use that as a slur, but I don't know. What else are you supposed to do?
It's like
I was leaving you
someone breaking into your house, right?
Yeah, exactly. So like if somebody breaks into Dyer's house and he does something
shoots
about
him,
it,
and then he calls him reactionary.
Yeah, you're just a reactionary.
Yeah, I have really good reactions.
Yeah, you're just a reactionary. You're not progressive like the guy who broke into your house who's trying to expand his territory. No, you're just a filthy reactionary. How dare you? So, on the nature of being reactionary, and actually the house invasion scenario is actually a good example, a good analogy for this is we have to wait for something to happen before we react to it. We're not that great at being proactive. The Constitution was pretty good proactive policy. We kind of set aside like, okay, well, we'll do something once and we'll set up this Constitution that kind of, enumerates all of the things that we're not supposed to do to each other. And then I can just go back to being, peacefully on my own, and I don't have to really worry about anybody coming in and doing things to me because, we already set aside this Constitution. So I don't got to really worry about being a reactionary because we already bounded off what we're supposed to be able to do to each other. But now that, the Constitution's just toilet paper at this point, now the Democrats and the leftists and the Marxists are doing stuff to us. And so we have to be reactionaries. We're reacting to it. One of the issues with that is, it kind of sucks that once the guy breaks into your house, now you've got to react to it. Wouldn't it be nice to kind of be proactive about that? But how do you go about being proactive about that? You could start doing some extreme things like setting up booby traps outside your house. Well, it's not legal. It's a little extreme. You might entrap something in your trap that you didn't intend, that wasn't coming to invade your house. So you've got some, and some people might think you're kind of crazy for being that preemptive. They may even say, well, it's illegal for you to be that preemptive. You're doing something wrong. You're doing something too aggressive. Now, after the home invasion, it becomes rather obvious. Well, yeah, I should have had a shotgun with a string trigger on my doorknob, and that would have solved the problem. But before the home invader happens, before somebody comes to tyrannize you, it's not exactly clear how you're supposed to prepare for that. It's very obvious after the fact. It's not obvious before. And then in the moment, your only option is to react to it, to be a reactionary. Now, why am I talking about this? Well, because of the clear escalation that Joe Biden has issued with this speech. We talked about what they may want to do with us. It seems clear that Joe Biden has an interest, and he at least has a fantasy about using the military against civilian targets. That's clear. It's clear that he has that fantasy. Now, whether or not he has that intent or even the ability is unclear. But let's say that is his intent. Let's say 2 years down the line, when we get to the 2024 election, Joe Biden says, "Nope, I'm not leaving. We're going to use the military." Well, what do you do to that? Well, you're going to have to react to that. Maybe you're thinking, well, is there a way that we could kind of preempt that? I don't want to go to the camps. I don't want to wait until they're knocking on my door to react to it. I want to be a little preemptive. That's one of the things about the and then they came for. I believe it was a poem. where it talks about, they came for, the dentist, but I wasn't a dentist. And so I said nothing. They came for the tailor, and I wasn't a tailor, so I said nothing. And, then they came for my neighbor, and I wasn't my neighbor, so I said nothing. And then they came for me, and there was nobody left to do anything about it. Well, what are you supposed to do before that? Now you could form a militia preemptively, but that's a little radical. That might actually cause the thing that you're trying to prevent. And that's the problem, is we never know until after the fact what would have been the right precautions for that. Maybe down the line, maybe 10 years from now, maybe 100 years from now, people look back and be like, wow, it would have been really prudent of them in 2022 to like form a militia and overthrow the government. Maybe it would have been really prudent for the January 6th people to actually take over the Congress. That would have stopped the horrors that we saw through the 2030s and the 2050s. Maybe, but we don't know that. You can't know that. And preempting that is nearly impossible. And it certainly is counter to conservative principles. And so we're left in the paradox of we're going to have to be reactionaries about this. You can't know. You can't really defend or preempt the F-15 coming for you until it starts happening. You can react to it. You can't really preempt it. And maybe there's some middle ground there. And certainly there is. You can go exercise your Second Amendment right. You can go exercise your First Amendment right by, influencing your friends and family and maybe just random passerby on the street. There's a lot of things that you can do to make sure yourself's a little bit more ready to react to something. But the big stuff, the big things that Joe wants to do, the big things that we've seen people, tyrants like Joe do throughout history, it's really, really hard to prepare for that. It's really, really hard to do anything but sit there and wait for it to come until you can be a reactionary against it.
And if you preempt it, then you actually give them fuel as a justification for those things they want to do.
Yes. So that's not me. I'm just really just a conversation on the philosophy of what being a reactionary rightist means. And it's, it may seem a little dangerous, a little counterintuitive that maybe how would you prepare for that? You really can't. The best way you can is make sure that you yourself, your family, your community, that you are self-sufficient, that you have the tools and the things that you need to not let some of this affect you. But at the end of the day, if this goes the way that other tyrants have gone throughout history, there's really not much that you can do to preempt that.
The best you can do is to oppose any additional gains on power, to put as many checks and limitations on power as possible, and you can only do that through voting. And the best way you can do that is by voting local, making sure that your local community represents your beliefs and opposes what the greater community, what the possible tyrant would like to impose. And if you do that, and you do that moving out from your city council to your district to your state, you can create the best preventative to what he wants to do. Because in the end, if all the states oppose what his policy, or the majority of the states, or your state opposes those policies, is very difficult for him to do those things the tyrant would want to do.
Yep. So, maybe we'll have to have more conversations about that later on. But, at some point, basically the problem is, the crux of it is that until they come for you, there's not much you can do to preempt that. It's, you don't know that they're going to come for you until after they do. That's a big problem that Dyer pointed out, is that if you preempt that in an effective way, then, well, now you give them reason to come for you in the first place. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And they have set up this paradox for you. It's very difficult to navigate. And their intention, a lot of what Joe was doing, a lot of what his speech was, a lot of what the FBI and the Democrats and the mainstream media in general is trying to do, is trying to goad you in to preempting early so that they have the excuse to come in. Don't give them that excuse, but don't be not ready if they come. Alrighty. Before I get on any more lists, let's move on. Dyer, want to talk about the MSNBC guy and the Marines that were flanking Joe Biden in the background.
So, MSNBC wasn't a guy. There was a female journalist who, quote unquote journalist, on Thursday from the Readout Network, Tiffany Cross, that was the journalist's name, warned that a civil war isn't coming. A civil war is here. Saying, basically, she is echoing what a lot of the Democrats believe is they are already fighting in a civil war. Let's play the video.
Do you have a timestamp for this 6 minute and 30 second long video?
I think it was at 51. No, that's the wrong video. Shit, I don't remember. Start playing it.
FBI to be held at the National Security Council. He's also an associate professor at the University of Michigan's Ford School of Public Policy. Javed, very happy to have you here. I know you have an op-ed in The Hill today titled "Violent Threats Against the FBI Make Us Less Safe." For someone who worked at the FBI, what's your overall reaction to this reporting, and explain what you mean by it makes us all less safe?
Yeah, Tiffany, thanks for having me on. And
I searched the transcript. It's up at like 4 minutes here.
Okay, sorry. Thank you.
You have the social media component. That train has left the station. There is no let's deal with the rhetoric. At this point, I do think we have to have serious conversations around preparing for actual violence. People keep saying a civil war is coming. I would say a civil war is here. And I don't mean to be hyperbolic. We can look at what has happened just in the past week alone. Since all this has happened, we've had 2 people try to declare war with FBI field offices. I don't think at this point we're going to all pack up our bags and go home and sing Kumbaya. So from a law enforcement...
And you had the FBI.
We've also had the FBI can declare war on the American people. So, chicken or the egg, right?
Yeah.
They put American citizens in solitary confinement for no real crime, hundreds of them, and yet that's not them declaring war on American people.
Again, they created a false flag situation to kidnap a sitting governor of a United States state. It's very clear that they had some involvement in January 6th. It's very clear that they've had involvement in other things. They just raided. You had a rogue DC office raid, a DC FBI office raid Mar-a-Lago, which is under the jurisdiction of the Miami FBI field office. And it was a different team than what had investigated Mar-a-Lago several months prior. Clearly a rogue actor. You have very obvious attempts within the FBI to cover up and help Hunter Biden and Joe Biden's corruption, to do the same thing with Hillary's email scandals, probably to do the same thing with Epstein's scandals. Somehow the FBI just has no idea. Again, Ghislaine Maxwell was the only person ever convicted for human trafficking, sex trafficking to no one. She sex trafficked children to nobody. She had no clients, apparently. That's never happened before, ever. You have this rogue FBI with, formerly led by James Comey, who basically made ending Trump his main mission, that he felt Trump was the enemy, that he was a Russian asset. You had the entire Russia narrative was entirely fabricated by the FBI, to the point that they were reaching out to other agencies like the CIA and getting information on other Trump known associates, and then editing the CIA documentation. There's actually somebody was shown to have done this, like officially, that an FBI agent edited CIA intel that made it look like Trump and his associates were Russian agents, when the reality is that the one guy was actually on the pay for the CIA, that he was a U.S. agent. He was a U.S. intelligence agent working on behalf of the CIA to give them information while he did his global business travels. And so he went from being a patriotic CIA asset helping Americans abroad, and then when the FBI received that, they just switched it and said, oh, actually, he wasn't a CIA asset. He was a Russian asset. So you've got absolute bedlam of a rogue agency in the FBI for the last 6 years. And then you get 2 field offices, get a crazy person yells at them outside their offices. I mean, come on. You had how many police precincts burned down by Democrat voters that Kamala Harris would later go on to bail out? I don't want to fucking hear it that law enforcement from either side really is getting harassed by people. Because if you want to play a numbers game, well, you can play a numbers game, but you're not going to like where those numbers end up.
Yeah. The last note you're going to make for this story was about the Marines in the background, and I already touched on it. The Marines are not allowed to be in uniform as part of a political rally. And if this is a political rally, which I think actually was more of a government policy, then they shouldn't have been there. And the leadership who sent them, because they were a team, what do we call them?
I don't know. I'm not in the military.
Sorry, they are a troop that go there for ceremonies.
Attachment?
No, like honor guard. There you go. It's like they look like the a formal group like honor guard. They're probably sent there for the event, not just a volunteer thing to be there, right? So
yes,
their
they
leadership
would have received orders to go there, right?
They probably received those orders with no knowledge of the content of the speech, but the leadership very likely at some point did know, because it was publicly available. The speech was sent out to media organizations, and probably was also available to the higher echelons of the military, who would be required to authorize this. So they shouldn't have let them be in this and supporting this language if it was a political speech. But I think actually this is this was government policy. I think that the higher echelons of the military are supportive of a president enforcing this policy if it ever gets to them, because Biden has swapped out all the higher echelons of the military. He has put in loyalists who are willing to do whatever he wants them to do. He obviously hasn't promoted and employed competent military leaders. Look at Milley as an example. We don't have competent military leaders. At the top right now, we have loyalists. And so that's why they would approve this.
Now, do these two guys, do they have any kind of recourse? Because they were clearly tricked into this position. Well, they may have been tricked into this position, but if for instance, they realized, oh, this was an inappropriate use of me for a political reason, do they have some kind of recourse where they can complain?
Yes, they could. They would fall on deaf ears most likely. And if they wanted to, they could have done and sacrificed their careers for their morals. What some soldiers have done when the president has passed and turned their back to him, or chosen to go to attention and then march off, showing that they are not going to stand in support of that language. It would have been the end of their career if they'd done that. But what's more important to you? You know?
Yeah, and I don't know much about where the honor guards come from, but I don't know.
They're basically special duty. So like,
yeah.
People who meet the look and performance requirements can
potentially an option may have been, when the rhetoric got heated, that maybe they just turn to and march back out that door that they came through.
Oh, it definitely would have been wrong. They definitely would have been punished for it, because they're supposed to have military bearing and stay in their position without moving. That is what they're required to do. If they had left, they would have been violating their orders and would have been punished for it, particularly if the reason why they left was explained.
I'm not going to ask you to declare whether or not them being ordered to flank this was an illegal order, but if, for instance, if you were ordered to do something and in the middle of performing that order you discovered that it was an illegal order, are you obligated to cease doing?
Yes, the moment the order is found to be unlawful, or if the context changes, making that the premise for the order in the first place no longer exists, yes, you cannot follow that order.
Again, I want to make we made this point on the show before, but probably not for a while. the reason why the military is not supposed to be at political events of this nature is due to the key difference between how our military operates and how, for instance, the People's Liberation Army of China operates. So the People's Liberation Army in China, they are not the Chinese state military. They are the military for the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. That is how they operate. So if the CCP were to lose power, the military goes with them, which is why they would never lose power, is because the party and the military are one in the same. They belong to and respond to the party, not to the state. In the U.S., the military does not belong to a particular party. They belong
Correct.
to we the people. They belong to the government. It's merely that the president is steward during his time in office.
We vow fealty to the Constitution, not to people.
Yes. So Joe Biden's he's a caretaker during his time. He's a steward during his time in office, but the military does not belong to him. The military, he is not free to do with the military anything that he wants. Winnie the Pooh over in China, Chairman Xi, he can do anything he wants with the military because the military responds to him as the party chairman. Anything he wants, he can order the military to do, and it's within their system legal for him to do that. That is not the case with Joe Biden. Joe Biden does not have unilateral authority to order the military to do anything, and one of those things is that he's not allowed to order them to do things that prop up his political party, such as flank him for a political speech. Now, again, Dyer and I are not being facetious or sarcastic. I think that everybody needs to take the Democrats at their word, to take Joe at face value, that this was not a political speech. This was a policy speech. And U.S. policy speech, if they are declaring a terrorist organization as a threat to the United States, hell yeah, it's appropriate to have the military behind him. Now, I think that he's inappropriately identified as a terrorist, but the point remains. This is very serious. This is not just regular run-of-the-mill political rhetoric. This is official White House policy, backed by all the branches in the military, that the U.S. now has a new war on terror and a new terrorist group to go after, and that is MAGA extremists. So I don't know that it's a problem for the U.S. military to be flanking Joe, because this wasn't a political speech. This was a policy speech. I have a problem with the policy. I have a pretty big problem with a lot of the things the military has been ordered to do.
They also have
abroad.
said many times that the greatest terrorist threat right now is not from overseas, is not from any religious hate group overseas. It is white people at home. Exactly. Homegrown white nationalists is what they call them, but they call Trump supporters white nationalists.
Yeah.
So they're saying Trump supporters are the greatest national security threat to our country.
I think I think it would be underestimating them and not taking the threat to us personally seriously. If you voted for Trump, you are in, I don't know by how much, but you are in more danger today of suffering from tyranny than you were on Wednesday. There was a non-insignificant move in that needle. It is not a given that America will just be America. It's not a given that America won't fall the way that China did, the way all the Latin American countries did, the way Eastern Europe did, the way Russia did, and the way Germany did. It is not a given that we won't fall like that. In fact, it is kind of the obvious next step for our empire. This is the point. We are at the decadent point. The American empire is at the decadent point where throughout history, you have 100 out of 100% chance that we are going to fall to what Joe Biden is proposing. So he's taking significant steps in that direction. Now, do I think that America is significantly different than most other empires throughout history? Yeah. Do I think that that difference could give us the longevity that those empires never had? Absolutely. But it's not a given. It's not a given. And I think just saying, oh, well, Joe's lying and this was a political speech rather than a U.S. policy speech, that is underestimating them, and it's not taking seriously the threat that Joe Biden represents to you personally.
Yep. All right. Anything else in the notes for this story?
Joe Man bad.
Okay. I need to go. We'll do the next story next week.
Okay. I'm going to go through
middle of the week.
I'm going to do the social media censorship story on my own because I'm just going to be reading the New York Post article about it. But if you want to just hang out and chat or leave
I'm
forever.
going to probably go throw up and then take a nap.
All right. Well, everybody give a effing chat. Give an effing chat for Dyer to pay your respects to his health. But
hopefully it's not myocarditis, right? All right.
Well, I appreciate you being here. Get better soon, buddy.
All right. Bye.
All right. Bye. Let me see if I can just switch over to me. It's just me. I have taken over this. I'm a tyrant. I'm Joe Biden, but for Direwolf Media, I've taken it over. Alrighty, so one other story we got here is about social media censorship. Obviously, most of the show today was about that speech just because of how ridiculous it was. But there was another story this week that certainly adds some color to it. So Joe Biden's speech doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? There's very tangible things that his administration is doing to facilitate, encourage, and grow his tyranny. I could enumerate them, but again, we don't have all day. A big one is attacks on the First Amendment, on freedom of speech. And this week, we've seen some things that kind of make conspiracy theories into just, well, conspiracies, because they're no longer theories. One of those things is the White House coordinating with social media companies to censor ideas, topics, trends, and even individual people. So New York Post has an article about that, but this has been kind of a blowing up story earlier in the week. Again, Joe Biden's bomb kind of snuffed out all other stories, but still important to remember. So from the New York Post, White House, let me see if I can get that centered better. What happened? All right. White House, big tech collude to censor misinformation lawsuit. So this has been one of the things that, Republicans and the right have really needed to do for a long time, is that there's been complaints about social media censorship for a long time, and everybody just says, well, you can't do anything about it because of Section 230. No, Section 230 says that you're still free to sue social media companies for censoring you. It's just that if it's found that it exists under this very particular category of descriptions, then the lawsuit doesn't go anywhere. The social media company was allowed to do that. But you have to take it to court to test that. And so a lot of people have been kind of, reticent to take it to court because they don't want to waste all that money, or they just, I guess they just believe that it's not going to go anywhere. But sometimes you just got to try. So somebody has finally tried, and they have brought a lawsuit. All right. So the Biden administration worked in tandem with social media giants like Facebook and Twitter to censor statements they deemed, quote, misinformation about topics including the COVID-19 pandemic, two Republican state attorney generals said on Thursday, as they pushed for the release of emails between top executive branch officials and big tech titans. So it seems like two Republican state attorneys generals are the ones suing for information. Let's find out more. In a petition filed on Wednesday in Louisiana federal court, State Attorney General Jeff Landry and his Missouri counterpart, Eric Schmidt, charged that dozens of federal officials across at least 11 federal agencies engaged in a, quote, massive, sprawling federal censorship enterprise. The Starship Enterprise. No, it's the censorship enterprise. With the intent and effect of pressuring social media platforms to censor and suppress private speech that federal officials disfavor. All right, so a little more information here. So we got 2 Republican state attorney generals. They are from Louisiana and Missouri, and they are claiming that dozens of federal agents across dozens of federal agencies have engaged in a massive coordinated censorship enterprise endeavor with the intent of pressuring social media platforms to censor and suppress the private speech, the First Amendment protected speech of U.S. citizens that the federal officials disfavor, which is not legal at all. The Biden administration they continue. The Biden administration has not been shy about leaning on social media companies to police their content. On July 15th, 2021, then White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki admitted her colleagues were, quote, flagging problematic posts for Facebook that spread disinformation. Yes, there was a clip that went a little bit viral at that time of Jen Psaki saying, we'll find Facebook posts that we don't like and we'll flag them and we'll send them off to to Facebook, and Facebook will take care of them. Let's see here. Quote, it's important to take faster action against harmful posts, and Facebook needs to move more quickly to remove harmful violative posts, Psaki added at the time. It's justified because, well, we wouldn't want you to be misinformed. The government, they're here to help you. They're here to help you make sure that you only see true things and no false things because they're the government and they know best. Let's see here. The following day, Biden accused platforms like Facebook of, quote, killing people by allowing so-called misinformation to propagate. So the carrot was, well, we'll send you some emails to flag posts, and you guys can help us help you help the American people. And then the next day, you got the stick of Joe Biden saying, well, if you don't help us help you help people, well, you're killing people. You're literally killing people. And if Facebook is literally killing people, I mean, well, isn't it justified? Isn't it justified that they just remove a few posts? I mean, if you could not kill people by censoring a Facebook post, you'd do it, wouldn't you? You're not a monster. Facebook's no monster either. Zuckerberg may be a lizard person, but he's no monster. Alrighty. Let's see here. So they got a lot of pictures here. We all know what the White House and we all know what Jen Psaki looks like. Thank you for the large pictures. Alrighty. They continue. Shortly after Biden's comments about Facebook killing people, an email from an unidentified Facebook official to Surgeon General Vivek Murthy. Vivek, he was in this story too. Read in part, I know our teams met today to better understand the scope of what the White House expects from us on misinformation going forward. So Facebook officials, they're emailing people saying, we understand that the White House has expectations from us about misinformation. Under no circumstances does the Constitution prescribe that private companies have any kind of expectations from the executive branch regarding First Amendment protected speech. Let's see here. So 7 days later, on July 23rd, 2021, the same Facebook official proudly informed officials at the Department of Health and Human Services that the company was taking action against a group dubbed the Disinformation Dozen about their posts on COVID-19 vaccines. Quote, we removed 17 pages, groups, and Instagram accounts tied to the Disinfo Dozen. So a total of 39 profiles, pages, groups, and Instagram accounts have been deleted thus far, resulting in every member of the Disinfo Dozen having at least one such entity removed, the email read. Later adding, quote, we also expect the group of false claims that we keep removing to keep up with recent trends of misinformation that we are seeing. So likely that information, if you remember what the information landscape in July of 2021 was regarding COVID, and what the current information about COVID is, and about vaccines, and about opening schools, and about masks, and about all of that stuff. I wonder if the Disinformation Dozen, I wonder if in review from a year later if that was so disinfoed, or if maybe some of it was turned out to be true. Let's see here. The relationship was so cozy, and they're talking about the relationship between the White House and Facebook, that on July 20th, 2021, White House COVID-19 response team digital coordinator Clark Humphrey received a response from Facebook in seconds when he asked about getting a fake Dr. Fauci Instagram account taken down. Quote, "Hi there. Any way we can get this pulled down?" Humphrey wrote along with a link to the Instagram account. It is not actually one of ours." "Yup, on it," came back the answer from Facebook. Within seconds, Facebook was on it. Wow. I've had my Twitter, I know, and Twitter and Facebook are different, but I've had my Twitter account suspended for like almost 2 years now for a bullcrap reason, and I can't get a response back in 2 years, and they get a response back in seconds. I also had my Instagram account removed. I used to have an Instagram account for literally about 30 days. I followed Fox News, Dyer's Wife, and a bunch of cute Fox accounts, and I did not post anything on it. And then after it was maybe 3 weeks, I couldn't log in, and then I looked at my email, and it said, "Oh, we've removed your account for violating our community guidelines." I didn't actually post anything. I think I reposted some Fox. I think it's called something different on Instagram too. I regrammed some things about foxes because I like foxes, as you guys might imagine. And for some reason that violated the community guidelines. Now the only thing I can imagine is because I followed Fox News, which was the real Fox News, not just news about the animal, and then also some other right-wing political figures, just to see what they were saying on Instagram, not to actually interact with them at all. And for some reason that just violated their guidelines, I guess. So I did not get a quick response back from Instagram, certainly not within seconds, about how do I get that back up. But if you are a White House staffer and you want to pull down a Fauci parody account, well, god damn it, Facebook's on it. In another email from April 2021, it shows a scheduled meeting for White House staffers to be, quote, briefed by Twitter on vaccine misinfo. Oof, I bet that aged well. Probably aged about as well as a child who got the vaccine. Still another record from July 28 of that year shows a Facebook official proposing to a CDC counterpart that, quote, "In addition to our weekly meetings, we're doing a monthly misinfo debunking meeting with maybe claim topics communicated a few days prior so that you can bring in the matching experts to chat casually for 30 minutes or so." So in July of 2021, the CDC and Facebook were meeting weekly and also an additional monthly meeting. That's 5 meetings a month. Them's a lot of meetings. Sound like they work for my company. We just have a lot of meetings and don't get anything done. Alrighty, so CDC disinfo debunking. Okay, so I wonder, did the CDC did they debunk the masks, that the masks don't work, and then they debunked that because the masks do work, and then they've since gunked it, that the masks were maybe not that effective, and maybe the fibers were causing problems in people's lungs. Because that's the newest info from the CDC is that masks probably weren't effective at all. So I wonder what the misinfo was. It's really not so much as the misinfo as it was just what do we want the narrative to be. Because the masks weren't really about whether or not they worked. It was about compliance. Because if you're willing to wear a mask, well, maybe it's a little bit easier to make you willing to get 4 vaccines. Alrighty, so in response to, should we add an extra meeting? Yes, we would love to do that, the CDC official answered. Of course. I don't know who this guy is. This guy is Schmidt. Okay, so this guy, he looks a little soyish, but this is Schmidt, who is one of the attorneys generals who's going after Facebook and the White House for this. So we'll let him slide on his very long chin. Alrighty. So, quote, we have received a number of documents that clearly prove that the federal government has an incestuous relationship with social media companies and clearly coordinated to censor freedom of speech, but we're not done, Schmidt said in a statement on Thursday. So this, what we've seen so far, is just the tip of the iceberg. Apparently they got a lot more. Let's hear. The Justice Department is cowering behind executive privilege and has refused to turn over communications between highest-ranking Biden administration officials and social media companies. That's why yesterday we asked the court to compel the Department of Justice to produce those records. We're just getting started. Stay tuned. I would imagine by the court, because it's capitalized there, I would imagine he means the Supreme Court. And basically what he's saying there is that we know that there's more evidence of collusion between social media and the White House to violate your First Amendment. Now, again, how does the First Amendment work? First Amendment says the government cannot restrict your freedom of speech. And by extension, they are not allowed to compel or to collaborate with private companies to censor your freedom of speech. Now, a little aside here is the Biden administration wants to talk about semi-fascist. Well, fascism is the lucrative merger of corporation and state. The lucrative merger to do what? Well, to oppress the people. That's the part that's left out. So if you are, I don't know, merging corporation and state to get around, not really, to try to get around the First Amendment to violate people's rights, well, I don't know. I'd say that's semi-fascist. If they were doing it with, like, I don't know, all the amendments, let's say the other 9 on the Bill of Rights, you know, I'd say they're full fascists. If they're just doing it with one amendment, well, you know, I think that's semi-fascist. That's my definition of semi-fascist. Is like, I think you can get to 3. Let's say you can have 3 amendments that you're violating by merging the corporation and state. And I think that's semi-fascist. If you get to 4, now we're getting into full fascist territory. So let's not get there. And all 10, I mean, that's like the trifecta. I mean, that'd be like MAGA fascists, MAGA levels of fascism right there. So right now they're just in semi-fascism. I know they want to say that we're semi-fascist, but that's just because clearly they are. But yeah, I don't think it's full fascism yet. Just semi. All right, let's see here. So the attorneys generals, again, the one from Louisiana and Missouri, who are spearheading this case. And if you are in a state that is not Louisiana and Missouri, I would say you should send a letter to your attorney general and say, hey, why aren't you on this case? You need to be helping these people out. They're doing good work. And I, you know, my state's not on this. I think I deserve, I think I clearly was taken down for a few things on this. I want my state to start defending my rights for the First Amendment. So send a letter to your state's attorney general and tell them to get on this thing. Let's see here. Let's see. Okay, so attorney generals have identified at least 45 people within the HHS and the Department of Homeland Security alone who communicated with social media companies about misinformation. They also claim that officials at other agencies, including the Census Bureau and the Food and Drug Administration and the FBI and the State Department and the Treasury Department, were at least aware of the censorship enterprise. That was just like all of them. I mean, surprisingly, the ATF's not in there, probably because, you know, they're busy shooting your dog. But if they weren't so busy shooting your dog, they probably would have been aware of this as well. In addition to the document dump, Meta, which Meta is Facebook's new name, it's like they changed their corporate pronouns. Like, they're Facebook. It's still Facebook. I mean, they've been called, the New York Post has been calling them Facebook for this entire article, and then the last paragraph they switch over to using the correct pronoun and calling them Meta now. Sorry, Zuckerberg, you guys are Facebook. Let's just deal with it. Facebook has disclosed that at least 32 officials, including workers at the FDA, U.S. Election Assistance Commission, and the White House, have communicated with the company about content moderation. But those contacts weren't disclosed in the government's disclosures. Okay, so basically, so what that means is, like, during the investigation, we found that there's the Facebook half of the communication about more topics of censorship. However, when we went to go find the other side of that email from the various agencies, all of a sudden, well, we can't share that with you. Why? Well, it's classified. Well, why is it classified? Well, we can't make it public that we're violating people's rights. Obviously, it has to be classified. Let's see here. But those contacts weren't disclosed in the government's disclosures, Landry and Smith said. YouTube disclosed contacts with 11 officials, some of which weren't shared by the government in response to the lawsuit. So basically, they're going around to all the tech companies and saying, hey, we are subpoenaing all of your communications about censorship with the government. We'd like to see those emails. And then they're being provided by the tech companies. And then on the flip side, they're doing Freedom of Information Acts to those government agencies, and they're getting bingo squat nothing Zippo goose egg. And, well, I don't know. You can't have that. I really don't believe that YouTube just had half a conversation with the White House about censorship, and all of a sudden, nobody was on the other side of those emails. It was just YouTube screaming into the void. It was just Meta screaming into the void. That dog don't hunt. So not only did your government, Joe Biden's executive branch, engage in collusion with private companies to violate your First Amendment rights, they're also covering it up. Heads better roll on this one. I mean, this would be a great reason for an impeachment after the midterms. I know a lot of people want reasons for impeachment to be about the Mar-a-Lago raid, or about things that Hunter did, or about things Biden did in Ukraine. There's a lot of territory, a lot of different options for that. I think that if it's found that Joe Biden was directing his executive branch to collude with private companies to violate the First Amendment, that's a pretty good one. I'd say that'd be a pretty good reason for an impeachment. Again, we got kind of our pick of the litter there, and whether or not we should do impeachment is a whole other discussion. But if we did do an impeachment, I would say this is a great candidate for being the reason why. Alrighty, let's see here. I do want to read through some of the chats here, because I saw you guys were a little bit active on YouTube, so let's see if there's anything fun to respond to in there. So we got let's see here. Social media cannot be held accountable for third-party actions on the platform. They're full of it. Yes. You Slowpoke's yelling at me about the Discord link. Yeah, you're right. We're really bad at doing anything other than just doing the show. We're really bad at just maintaining the channel. We should probably do better about that, but I don't want to make promises we can't keep. Let's see here. Their website, their official website, not a conspiracy, nor the turbulent few months during these trying times. Russia was another talking point for the same meeting in the 2019 meeting. Trying to figure out where these go to. So your Collaborous Gaming says Second Amendment militia was contextualized by the founding fathers as in checks and balances, force levied by the people against tyrannical government. Yeah, that's actually an interesting way to talk about it, as in the term of checks and balances. So you've got the three branches that are supposed to check and balance each other, but who balances them? I remember this video I watched, I think it was 5th grade, but it was just explaining how the branches worked, and it was talking about the checks and balances, and it was supposed to be kind of a fun video for kids, just to give a quick overview of it. And it showed each branch as a pillar, and it showed that as the executive branch grows in power, the judicial and legislative branch grow to check that power. And that showed, if the legislative branch, if they grow their power, well, it naturally, the only way for them to grow their power is if the executive branch also rises to check and balance them, so that they're always checked and balanced. There is no way for one branch to increase its power over the other ones, because the other ones will always rise to meet that power. And what I noticed in that is that there's never any decrease in power. It's always increasing in power exponentially, always trying to one-up each other. So there's just this forever exponential race upwards of the branches trying to check and balance each other. And what you're describing there with the Second Amendment and thinking of it in terms of check and balances, that's the fourth check that should prevent or keep from happening that exponential increase in powers of the three branches. Yeah, sure the three branches can still check and balance each other, but they all have infinite power. Well, the check and balance against that and against that infinite trifecta, that triune of tyranny, the check and balance against that is the Second Amendment, is the people, is the militia, should it come to that. And you say that is in Federalist 46. I should probably read the Federalist Papers. I'm not that well read on those, but I believe you. So you say that they recommend for every soldier under the federal command that 13 militiamen are meant to keep and check that complement from being made. Let's see here. Yeah, that's probably a pretty good ratio, is 13 to 1. I would say we're probably at about that with the number of, especially after the recent increase in gun sales the last couple of years under COVID. Now, how well trained are those militiamen versus just gun owners? That might be up for debate, but right now we have something like 100,000 fighting, like, combat forces. The military is something like, I want to say like Dyer's going to be yelling at me about this, but something like 1.5 to 2 million. But of that, you've got something like 100,000 fighters, and the rest of them are kind of support. I would say we probably have close to 13 to 1 on that. I would say we pretty quickly could rally 13 million Americans if needed. Now, the force multiplier of an F-15, that one might be hard to come by. However, a F-15 turbine, I hear it doesn't run so well when it's got a 22 lodged in it. So it don't take much. Alrighty, guys. Well, let's see. You say also, Collaborous Gaming says, when the Red regulators came, heroes like Revere warned the Minutemen to defend their rights as humans and as creations of the God they shared and whom they inspired the English monarchy institutionally. That's very inspiring rhetoric. I think our biggest issue is not going to be finding 13 to 1 militia members. I think it's going to be finding inspiring leaders. Right now, I don't know. We got some thought leaders, but I'm not thinking that we have. I don't know. I'm not seeing Trump having that kind of inspiring rhetoric. I'm not even seeing a DeSantis having that inspiring rhetoric. Unfortunately, well, I don't know. I don't want to say if it's fortunately or unfortunately. I just kind of the nature of the beast is, if we have an inspiring figure like that have to arise, if this goes the worst way, right? The inspiring leader, the Paul Reveres of our day, are probably not known yet. It's probably not going to be a General Crowder who has the rhetoric that the future remembers. It's not going to be, a militiaman DeSantis or anybody that's got a name that you recognize right now. It's probably going to be somebody who is not in politics right now. It's probably going to be a regular civilian figure, as many of those men were back in the day. So, I guess I say that because right now I'm not seeing any of our current thought leaders on our side having rhetoric that is anywhere near that inspiring, but that may not matter. If we get to a point where we need that kind of rhetoric, the great man theory of history says that somebody will rise to the occasion, or the occasion will find somebody. So, I guess we got that to look forward to. Alrighty, guys. Well, I thank you for joining me and hanging out with me as after Dyer left. He's a little sick today. We wish him well, and wish you guys well. And also have a happy long weekend. Remember, it's Memorial Day, so remember those who served, and think about the country that you were blessed to be born in, if you were born here, or blessed to be a citizen of, if not. And I guess think about what you want that country to look like next year. Alrighty, guys. Well, I had a great time, and we will see you next week. All right, Travis signing off. Direwolf out. Oh boy, hold on a second. Right at the end here. apparently DLive has just age restricted. All right. Well.